Chapter 1974. That person actually went over. What's going on? How did he get out just now? I didn't see it clearly. It seems like he teleported over. Where did he come from? The crowd around the lake saw this scene and instantly set off waves of discussion. The fat and thin old men also frowned slightly. Even with their eyesight, they couldn't see clearly how Su Zimo broke through the obstruction of the red ink squid and landed on the isolated island just now. This kid has some tricks up his sleeve. The thin old man secretly transmitted his voice to the fat old man. If this kid can really pluck the 7-glow immortal ginseng, hee. The fat old man didn't continue. He just laughed with a fiery gaze and an excited expression on his face. In the sky above the isolated island, Su Zimo controlled the wings of the rock and slowly descended. He spread out his divine sense and probed the situation on the island. Tang Zi seemed to have sensed something. She struggled and quickly distanced herself from Su Zimo. She lowered her head slightly and didn't say a word. I owe you another favor. After a while, Tang Zi finally spoke. Originally, she had already repaid Su Zimo a favor, but not long after, she owed him another one. Tang Zi's heart was in a mess. She was stubborn and extremely headstrong. She didn't want to owe others a favor. Originally, she wanted to repay this person's favor as soon as possible and have nothing to do with him. However, for some reason, she couldn't get rid of this person after meeting him. Instead, she fell deeper and deeper. It's fine. Su Zimo replied casually, my goal is also the 7-glow immortal ginseng. Just now, I'm just saving you. Don't take it to heart. Tang Zi clenched her fists slightly. The more Su Zimo said this, the more she couldn't let go of it in her heart. There's something strange about this island. Be careful. Su Zimo's voice came again. Tang Zi's heart skipped a beat. She temporarily put aside her thoughts and calmed down. The 7-glow immortal ginseng was probably located in the central area of the isolated island. Out of caution, Su Zimo landed on the edge of the isolated island. But when he landed on the island, the eyeless fish and the red ink squid did not chase after him. The red ink squid was quite angry. Hundreds of thick tentacles flapped in the lake, setting off layers upon layers of huge waves. The waves were turbulent, but this demonic beast did not dare to approach the isolated island even half a step. However, Su Zimo spread out his divine sense and explored the island, but he didn't find any other life forms on the island. Strange. Su Zimo murmured and carefully walked towards the 7-dawn immortal ginseng. Tang Zi followed behind. On the isolated island, there were many shrubs and grasses that were as tall as a person. The two of them quickly disappeared from the sight of many cultivators. This isolated island was not big, but Su Zimo, out of caution, spent 2 hours walking to the location of the 7-dawn immortal ginseng. Throughout the entire process, the two of them did not encounter any danger. Su Zimo stopped 100 feet away from the 7-dawn immortal ginseng and did not continue to approach. Through the shrubs before him, he could see an immortal ginseng that was the size of an infant's arm. It shone with 7 resplendent lights and emitted a rich medicinal fragrance with overwhelming spirit qi. There doesn't seem to be any danger? Tang Zi said softly. Something's amiss. Su Zimo's expression was grim. Although he did not discover any danger nearby and his spirit perception did not even warn him, he felt that something was amiss. Su Zimo scanned the surroundings several times, but still, he did not discover anything. What sort of environment can nurture a treasure like the 7-dawn immortal ginseng? Suddenly, Su Zimo asked. Tang Zi replied, I'm not sure if that's a legendary immortal herb. However, the amount of energy required to nurture an utmost treasure like that is unimaginable. There's nothing special about this isolated island and I can't see anything special either. I don't know how such an immortal herb could be nurtured. Su Zimo pondered for a moment but could not think of a reason. Tang Zi said, should I go over and take it? If I can pluck it, I'll return it to you. Su Zimo glanced sideways and his heart skipped a beat. Although Tang Zi did not say it explicitly, her intention was nothing more than to return him a favor. I'll go, Su Zimo smiled gently. He had some treasures on him and many trump cards. Even if he encountered any danger, he would have a chance of escaping. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo pushed aside the shrubs before him and walked towards the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng slowly. 90 feet. 70 feet. 50 feet. The closer Su Zimo got to the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng, the more nervous he was. However, there was nothing unusual around him and it was frighteningly quiet. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo was only 30 feet away from the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng. There was still no danger. Su Zimo did not dare to be careless and continued approaching slowly while maintaining his vigilance. 10 feet. He only needed 2 more steps and the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng would be within reach. Su Zimo's mood turned excited as he walked forward once more. Right then, a change happened. The surrounding space seemed to tremble. Immediately after, an extremely pure and cold energy spread out from the surroundings of the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng. In Su Zimo's vision, the void before him was like a blank piece of paper with a speck of pitch-black ink on it. Thereafter, the ink spread and spread over continuously. Su Zimo's eyes widened. Darkness spread and devoured everything around it. The shrubs around the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng vanished completely as the darkness swept past, becoming a part of the darkness. As though they sensed something, the many eyeless fish in the lake, including the scarlet ink squid, burrowed into the depths of the lake one after another and vanished. Even the lake water seemed like it could not withstand some sort of pressure. Just now, it was still surging but it calmed down in the blink of an eye. Look! Someone pointed at the lake and exclaimed. The entire lake turned pitch black, as though someone had splashed ink on it. It emitted a cold and sinister aura. On the lone island, Su Zimo's feet seemed to have sunk into a quagmire and he could not move at all. When he saw the darkness surge towards him, his spirit perception warned him repeatedly. Su Zimo released his extreme speed divine power and conjured primordial rock wings right away. Even so, he was still unable to escape. It was as though his body had fallen into a bottomless abyss and no matter how he struggled, he could not break free. His spirit consciousness moved and he wanted to summon the Hell Suppression Cauldron. However, his spirit consciousness seemed to be devoured by the darkness and he lost connection with the Hell Suppression Cauldron as well. He could not release his secret skills such as the True Dragon's 9 flashes. Su Zimo could only watch helplessly as the darkness surged towards him. Su Zimo! Tang Zi's exclamation sounded from behind. Don't come over! Su Zimo roared. Anyone would be trapped in such a situation. The darkness surged over and swept past Su Zimo's right leg first. Su Zimo lowered his head and his pupils constricted in disbelief. His right leg was the first to disappear after being swept by the darkness. There was no pain. There was no blood. However, Su Zimo knew clearly that his right leg was gone. That was because he could not feel his right leg at all. His flesh and bones were gone. It was completely devoured by the darkness and became a part of it. Immediately after, it was his calf. The darkness devoured at an extremely fast speed. The next moment, Su Zimo's entire right leg disappeared. Chapter 1975. Although there was no pain, the feeling was too horrifying and despairing. In the upper realm, one had to cultivate to become an earth immortal to regrow a limb. One had to cultivate to become a divine immortal to regrow a drop of blood. Now, Su Zimo was only a stage 9 mystic immortal. Moreover, after being swallowed by the darkness, not even a drop of blood appeared. Even if a divine immortal came, it would be useless. In the darkness, the only light was the immortal ginseng, which was emitting colorful light. At this time, the immortal ginseng, which was full of vitality, became a little demonic in Su Zimo's eyes. Could this dark energy be from the immortal ginseng? What should I do? Is Qinglian's real body really going to die here today? Dai Yu and the human emperor had told him that the upper realm was more dangerous than Tianhuang. After he ascended to the upper realm, he had encountered several life and death crises, and almost died each time. For more than 1,000 years, not to mention exploring the vast 3,000 worlds, he had not even stepped out of the heaven realm or the 9 heavens immortal realm in the heaven realm. Countless thoughts flashed through Su Zimo's mind, and his heart was filled with a sense of unwillingness. In the blink of an eye, the darkness shrouded and swallowed his entire body. Suddenly, Su Zimo's left eye suddenly became as black as ink. The pupil inside disappeared, and a huge black vortex appeared, emitting a cold aura. The energy emitted from Su Zimo's left eye was very similar to the dark energy around him. It was even purer and more condensed. It was a nether fluorite. No one knew the origin of the nether fluorite. Rumor had it that this stone came from the upper realm. There were also people who said that this stone came from the illusory greater thousand world. But no matter what, this stone did indeed contain the most and dark energy, and it was even swallowing the surrounding darkness. As the dark energy in his body disappeared, Su Zimo's body reappeared. However, the absorption speed of the nether fluorite was very slow. The dark energy kept surging, and the nether fluorite could not swallow and refine all the dark energy. In this way, the darkness corroded and the glowing devoured, one entering and one exiting. The two states on Su Zimo's body formed a temporary balance. Although Su Zimo's figure appeared, it was only a part of him. To be more precise, it was just a green skeleton. This skeleton was condensed by Su Zimo using Qinglian's creation in the Heaven Wasteland Earth Palace. Although the bones were still there, the flesh and blood on them had completely disappeared, completely devoured by the darkness. On the other side, Tangzi stared at the darkness in front of her, her eyes dim. As an assassin, one must have a cold-blooded heart and not be restrained by any emotions or external objects. The two of them hadn't known each other for long. In Tangzi's heart, she had thought that Su Zimo was just a slightly special guest in her life. However, at this moment, when she saw Su Zimo buried in the darkness, she felt a sadness that she had not felt for many years. At this moment, countless images of her time with Su Zimo flashed through her mind. She was shocked to discover that she had spoken more to this person in the past few days than she had in the past few hundred years combined. As she thought, a layer of mist appeared in Tangzi's eyes. At this moment, a wisp of dark green light shone on the mist in her eyes. Tangzi raised her head instinctively. Tangzi's expression changed as she cried out in surprise. The scene before her was way too shocking. In the darkness, two different balls of light were blooming. At the front was the 7 different lights emitted by the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng. At a position 10 feet away from the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng, there was a human skeleton. It was green in color and emitted a glow, full of vitality as it fought against the surrounding darkness. Su Zimo! Tangzi could not help but call out softly. However, the area in front of him was shrouded in darkness. Even the sound of his voice would be instantly swallowed up. He's not dead. Tangzi's expression turned nervous. If she had not witnessed it with her own eyes, she would not have imagined that a cultivator's skeleton could grow to such a state. More than that, she could not imagine that the skeleton was still emitting a tremendous amount of vitality even though the flesh and blood on it had already disappeared. In the darkness, Su Zimo could vaguely sense that the power of darkness around him was increasing. The absorption speed of the nether fluorite was far slower than the gathering speed of the darkness. If he continued to linger in the darkness, even the nether fluorite would not be able to protect him. Su Zimo moved instinctively. Immediately after, he was delighted. That was because the nether fluorite had absorbed the power of darkness in his body and allowed him to regain some freedom. Although he was in the darkness and his movements were still slow, at least he wasn't as immobile as he was in the beginning. Su Zimo was prepared to leave the darkness. However, his gaze suddenly landed on the immortal ginseng that was emitting a rainbow glow. Since I'm already at this point, I might as well take a gamble. A decisive look flashed through Su Zimo's eyes as he made a decision instantly. His flesh and blood had already been devoured by the darkness. If he were to retreat just like that, it would be a huge loss. He did not know how long it would take for him to regrow his flesh and blood. Furthermore, it was only a skeleton that was neither human nor ghost. If someone with ulterior motives were to see it, the secret of Qinglian's true body could be exposed. At that thought, Su Zimo's gaze intensified as he reached out slowly and grabbed the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng. He was 10 feet away from the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng and his arm could not touch it at all. Crackle! Su Zimo's arm bones suddenly expanded by 10 feet and his jade green bone palm grabbed the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng instantly. Rise! Su Zimo hollered and exerted strength in his arm, pulling the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng out of the ground. There was a large amount of mud on the ginseng's roots. Pulling out the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng caused a huge pit to appear on the ground. Su Zimo grabbed the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng and was about to retreat when his gaze inadvertently swept past the pit and paused. That is, he focused his gaze and after looking for a moment, his body suddenly shuddered. The surrounding power of darkness surged over and became even colder and purer. Su Zimo's breathing became extremely heavy and creaking sounds could be heard from his bones. He did not dare to hesitate and retreated continuously. After he retreated more than 100 feet away, the power of darkness gradually dissipated and surged into the pit. Just now, the scene seemed like an illusion. However, Su Zimo had experienced it personally and could deeply understand how terrifying the power of darkness was. The surrounding bushes and grass had all disappeared. The area within 100 feet radius turned into a vacuum zone. If not for the nether fluorite, he would have disappeared from this world completely like the bushes and grass. Chapter 1976. How are you? Tang Zi's voice sounded from behind and Su Zimo turned around. Tang Zi was shocked. Right now, Su Zimo was merely a skeleton without any facial features. It was extremely frightening. Although Tang Zi was prepared for this, she was still shocked by Su Zimo's left eye. It seemed like a black hole that emitted a cold and dark aura. Embedded in Su Zimo's eye socket, it was as though it could suck in a person's soul. Tang Zi merely took a single glance and felt her consciousness go blurry. As though he sensed something, Su Zimo lowered his head slightly and did not continue staring at Tang Zi. After a while, the darkness in his left eye dissipated gradually. Hurry and eat this 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng, Tang Zi said hurriedly. This immortal herb can revive the dead and regrow flesh and bones. The flesh you lost can definitely be nourished by the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng. Su Zimo nodded and sat down cross-legged without hesitation. He sent the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng into his mouth and bit off half of it. The 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng did not have the bitterness of herbs. Instead, it was fragrant and sweet. Su Zimo chewed slightly and swallowed it into his stomach. A warm current flowed down and an unimaginably rich essence energy exploded in his stomach and spread throughout his body. That energy was way too strong. Opening his mouth slightly, Su Zimo spat out a series of resplendent lights. Tang Zi merely absorbed some of the essence energy seeping out of the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng nearby and felt her injuries heal slightly. Su Zimo's body was burning and every single inch of his bones felt itchy. He was delighted. He knew that this itchy feeling was a change caused by the nourishment of his flesh and blood. Su Zimo lowered his head and saw that a thin blood membrane had already grown on the surface of his jade green bones. The rich essence energy was still colliding and condensing on it. His flesh and blood were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Su Zimo was about to devour the remaining half of the 7 Glow Immortal Ginseng when he suddenly paused. After a slight hesitation, he sealed the remaining half of the 7 Glow Immortal Ginseng and stored it in his storage bag. Actually, just half of the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng's energy was already extremely terrifying. If it weren't for the fact that Su Zimo was Qinglian's true form, the supreme deity of the floral tribe, the energy of the 7 Glow Ginseng might have blown him up. And now, Qinglian's true body was constantly absorbing the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng's energy, and her body was also rapidly growing. In fact, not long after Su Zimo broke through to the level 9 Mystic Immortal Realm, he encountered the blood calamity of the Spirit Mine and was taken away by the Azure Cloud County Governor. If he wanted to make another breakthrough and reach the Earth Yuan stage, he would need at least hundreds of years, or even thousands of years. Although Qinglian's true body absorbed Heaven-Earth Yuan Qi at a very fast speed, in order to grow, the amount of Yuan Qi energy required was also extremely shocking. If all the energy in this half of the 7 dawn immortal ginseng was absorbed and refined by Qinglian's true body, it would be equivalent to at least hundreds of years of cultivation. If Qinglian's true body could break through to the Earth Yuan stage, Su Zimo's combat strength would be greatly enhanced. This was not only an increase in cultivation level, but Qinglian's body would also undergo a metamorphosis. During the heavenly tribulation and ascension, Qinglian's true body had grown to the level 9 mystic immortal realm and evolved into an unpredictable treasure that could attack and defend the living soil of the 9 heaven. The living soil of the 9 heaven originated from Qinglian's creation. This meant that as Qinglian's true body's cultivation level continued to increase, the power of the living soil of the 9 heaven would also increase. If Qinglian's true body could grow to the level 10 mystic immortal realm, there would be another treasure that would be derived. As for what it was exactly, Su Zimo wasn't sure. In his sea of consciousness, the refining of the prison suppression cauldron was still ongoing. Su Zimo could clearly see that most of the cracks on the third wall of the cauldron had already been repaired, and the carvings on it had already taken shape. One of the 4 saints, the Black Tortoise. At that time, the Prajna Sutra would be even more complete, and the Black Tortoise Saint's soul would also leave behind its own inheritance. At that time, Su Zimo would undergo a complete transformation, and his combat strength would increase greatly. Of course, there was a prerequisite for all of this, and that was to leave the Emperor's tomb alive. As time passed, Su Zimo's flesh and blood gradually grew. After half a day, his appearance and facial features had already gradually taken shape. After a day, his flesh and blood continued to fill out, and his skin looked as white and tender as a newborn baby, with a green glow flowing on it. In Tang Zi's line of sight, Qinglian's true body was flawless and translucent. Sitting cross-legged, she looked like a green Qinglian. Tang Zi looked away. Although she could see that Su Zimo's body was extraordinary, she still couldn't recognize the origin of Qinglian's true body with her knowledge. After a day, the cultivators around the lake didn't disperse. Instead, more and more gathered. Cultivators from various factions were heading over. Dozens of cultivators were gathered in the northwest direction of the lake. The leader wasn't old, but he had an indescribable noble aura. What's the situation over there? This person had his hands behind his back, and his eyebrows were sharp as swords. Commander Yun Ting, I heard that there's a 7-glow immortal ginseng growing on the lone island in the lake, a cultivator beside him said. Yun Ting was unmoved. There must be danger lurking around such a treasure. The cultivator said, You're right, Commander. There are many eyeless fish and black squids blocking the lake. Many people have already died. However, the person paused for a moment and said, I heard that a man and a woman from the Great Jin Celestial Kingdom used some unknown method to break through the blockade and descend on the lone island. Yun Ting raised his eyebrows slightly, somewhat surprised. The cultivator continued, The man and woman should have plucked the 7-glow immortal ginseng, but they still haven't come out from the lone island after a day. Could the 2 of them have eaten the 7-glow immortal ginseng? Another person asked. Impossible. Yun Ting shook his head slightly and smiled. Even my body can't withstand the energy contained in the 7-glow immortal ginseng. If the 2 of them really dared to eat the 7-glow immortal ginseng, they're courting death. Let's go and take a look. Yun Ting said in a deep voice and walked in the direction of the lake. A gentle breeze blew past and blew at the token at his waist. There were 2 words written on it, Zishuan. One of the 3 great celestial kingdoms of the divine firmament celestial realm, the Zishuan celestial kingdom. On the other side, a group of cultivators was also walking over. The leader was an old man with a walking stick. There was also a token at his waist with the words Flaming Sun written on it. The Flaming Sun Celestial Kingdom. Old Go, do you need me to snatch the 7-glow immortal ginseng later? A black-robed man behind the old man asked in a low voice. There are many people gathered here and the situation is unclear. If you really snatch the 7-glow immortal ginseng, you'll be targeted by everyone. The old man with the surname Gu said indifferently. So what if I'm targeted by everyone? The black-robed man sneered. I, Fang Xian, am invincible in the lower world. I've transcended the 49 heavenly tribulations and ascended. I've never met a match in the mystic essence realm. Even if they join forces, I won't be afraid. Hee hee. The old man with the surname Gu laughed strangely and said, "There's quite a commotion here and many people have been attracted. Not only are the 3 great celestial kingdoms gathered, even the 4 great immortal sects are here. We should keep a low profile." Chapter 1977. Elder Gu glanced at Feng Xian and said, "You're invincible in the Flaming Sun Celestial Kingdom, but you might not be able to dominate the Divine Firmament Celestial Realm. Do you know who he is?" Elder Gu pointed at the young man from the Zixien Celestial Kingdom and asked slowly. "I don't recognize him." Feng Xian frowned slightly and said, "Could it be that this person also ascended through the 49 heavenly tribulations?" Elder Gu smiled and said, "That little kid is called Yun Ting, and he's from the upper world." "Yun, Zixien royal family?" Feng Xian frowned and asked. Elder Gu nodded slightly and said, "This Yun Ting is not only a royal family member, but he's also the youngest son of immortal King Zixien. He's a duke and is favored by the immortal King Zixien and his wife." Feng Xian was even more puzzled and asked, "Why would he come to the Arch-Tomb personally with such a noble status?" "I don't know about that." Elder Gu shook his head. Feng Xian pondered for a while and said with a smile, "I think he's a newborn calf who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. That's why he came to the Arch-Tomb." Elder Gu snorted and said, "Don't think that this little kid is only 200 years old. He was destined to be extraordinary from the moment he was born. This kid was born with a natural phenomenon. As soon as he descended, there was the sound of a sword that resounded for 3 days and lingered in the ears. It's rare to comprehend a sword Dao divine power at the age of 100. Immortal King Zixien and his wife even gathered countless natural treasures to nourish his bones and flesh. In this the Arch-Tomb, the strongest profound immortal should be Yun Ting, and you're no match for him." Hearing this, Feng Xian was unconvinced and said, "Any Dharma treasures are useless in the Arch-Tomb. Even if he knows how to use a sword, he can only fight with his bare hands here, and his battle strength will be greatly weakened. Without fighting, it's still unknown who will win." "There's no need to argue." Elder Ji's face darkened, and he slammed the walking stick in his hand. "Don't you know what status he has? Even if you can really defeat him, if you dare to hurt a single hair on him, even 10 lives won't be enough." Feng Xian lowered his head and clenched his fists slightly. A day and a night passed. Su Zimo slowly opened his eyes and let out a long breath. His flesh and blood had already recovered, and the darkness in his left eye had long since vanished, as if it had never existed. In just 1 day and 1 night of cultivation, he had already reached the peak of the 9th level of the mystic origin stage. He was only 1 step away from breaking through to the earthly origin stage. Half of the 7 Dawn immortal ginseng contained too much energy, and there was still a portion of it left in his body. This was the Emperor's tomb. It was not suitable to continue cultivating. After Su Zimo recovered his flesh and blood, he stopped. "Are you all right now?" Although Tang Zi was worried about Su Zimo, her face was expressionless, and her tone was as cold as usual. Su Zimo nodded, and then he turned around to look at the mud pit where the 7 glow immortal ginseng was and seemed to be lost in thought. "What happened?" Tang Zi couldn't help but ask when she saw Su Zimo's strange expression. Su Zimo pointed at the mud pit in the distance and said softly, "There seems to be a corpse down there." Recalling the scene when he saw the corpse, Su Zimo still had lingering fears. That corpse gave him an indescribable sense of fear and pressure. Even when he saw the corpse of the Feng Xian king, the fear and pressure were not as intense. Tang Zi's eyes narrowed slightly. "I know." Tang Zi said, "The surroundings, whether it's the lake or this island, there's nothing strange about it. The 7 glow immortal ginseng could only be nurtured because of that corpse. A corpse was used as nourishment to nurture a treasure like the 7 glow immortal ginseng." Tang Zi said slowly, "A corpse that could nurture the 7 glow immortal ginseng must have been at least a noble when it was alive. The darkness just now must have come from that corpse." Su Zimo said in a low voice. Since you've already gotten the 7-glow immortal ginseng, let's leave first, Tang Zi said. Su Zimo nodded. He did not want to experience that darkness again. With his cultivation, he was already very lucky to be able to escape with his life. Why aren't they out yet? Beside the lake, Li Tian was getting impatient from waiting. The shrubs and grass on the lone island were dense, and the many cultivators waiting by the lake did not know what was happening inside. However, everyone could clearly see that the 7 rays of light that belonged to the 7-glow immortal ginseng had vanished. This meant that someone had already plucked the immortal ginseng. Look, they're out. Right then, a man and woman rose from the lone island and flew towards the shore. It was Su Zimo and Tang Zi. Strangely enough, the bloodthirsty eyeless fish and scarlet ink squid did not appear during this process. Even Su Zimo and Tang Zi were confused, let alone the cultivators on the shore. How could this be? Tang Zi murmured softly. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo vaguely guessed an answer. Without any demon beasts obstructing them, the two of them arrived at the shore before long. There were many cultivators gathered around the lake from various factions, and they were all staring at the two of them. Everyone's gazes formed an invisible pressure. However, Su Zimo and Tang Zi were calm and composed. Tang Zi was born like that. No matter how many people there were, she was still expressionless. Su Zimo was used to storms, and such a scene naturally could not intimidate him. It seems that the two of you have already plucked the 7-glow immortal ginseng. Congratulations. In the distance, the leading young man from the Zishuan Immortal Kingdom cupped his hands and said, I'm Yun Ting from the Zishuan Immortal Kingdom. I wonder if the two of you are interested in selling this immortal ginseng? You can name the price. If you want to sell it, why don't we have an open auction? Everyone will have a chance. The other cultivator was right. That's how it should be. This suggestion attracted the agreement of many cultivators. You can't win against me. Yun Ting smiled and said, no matter what price you name, I can make the decision and increase it by 30%. The sounds of discussion in the surroundings instantly became much softer. Those who entered the arch-tomb did not have a high status. Even the fat and thin old men were only the servants of Duke Yunzhua. The young man in front of him was the real deal of the regional king. Even if they were to combine their wealth, they would not be as rich as him. Seeing that the cultivators were silent, Yun Ting was pleased and cupped his fists. Thank you for letting me win. Duke Yun Ting, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. The thin old man said slowly, the 7-glow immortal ginseng was obtained by the Great Gene Immortal Kingdom. We won't sell it. Yun Ting shrugged his shoulders and did not seem to mind. The fat old man looked at Su Zimo and Tang Zi and asked in a low voice, who has the 7-glow immortal ginseng? Hand it to me for safekeeping first. Su Zimo raised his brow and asked. The thin old man was impatient and urged, don't ask so much. Hurry up and hand over the 7-glow immortal ginseng. Duke Yuanzhua said that we can keep all the treasures in the arch-tomb if we obtain them. What do the two of you mean by that? Su Zimo asked with a fake smile. A murderous intent flashed through the thin old man's eyes. The fat old man took a deep breath and suppressed his impatience, saying in a low voice, right now, you're the target of everyone. It's not safe for the 7-glow immortal ginseng to be with you. It's only safe for it to be with us. Just hand it over if we ask you to. Cut the crap. Li Tian could not hold it in any longer and glared at Su Zimo fiercely as he hollered. What if I don't hand it over? Su Zimo asked with an indifferent expression. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 1978. The fat and skinny old men's faces darkened at the same time. The rest of the cultivators' faces changed as well. Su Zimo's words were obviously provoking the fat and skinny old men. These two old men represented the Duke of Yuanzhua and the Dajin Celestial Nation. They represented the supreme authority and power. Yun Ting clapped and laughed. This is going to be interesting. This guy is really bold. On the other side, the old man with the surname Gu from the Flaming Sun Celestial Nation gloated. The Dajin Celestial Nation is going to fight among themselves. Let's watch the show. What did you just say? The skinny old man stared coldly at Su Zimo and asked, I'm old and my hearing is a little bad. I didn't hear you clearly. Say it again for me. The fat old man sneered. Su Zimo, don't forget your status. You're just a lowly servant. Su Zimo's reaction in front of everyone made the two old men feel humiliated. They wanted to kill him. The rest of the cultivators shook their heads and looked at Su Zimo as if they were looking at a dead man. Only Tang Zi looked down and was expressionless. She seemed to be in a daze. Please calm down, exalted immortals. Leave this guy to me. Li Tian saw through the two old men's intentions. He stood up and said, I'll kill him within 10 moves. The fat old man nodded and said, If you kill him, I'll report it to His Highness and record it as a merit for you. Li Tian was overjoyed. He stood up now because he wanted to leave a good impression on the two old men and put in a good word for him in front of the Duke of Yuanzhou. Li Tian walked towards Su Zimo and shook his neck, letting out a soft sound. With a ferocious gaze, he grinned. Although the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng is a supreme treasure, it's a pity that you won't be alive to take it. The two of them were getting closer and closer. The cultivators around them started to disperse. They had all survived the 10 Extremes prison and knew that Li Tian's bloodline and physical body were extremely strong. He was ferocious in close combat. Su Zimo has lost his last chance. If he used the powerful movement technique from before, he might still be able to contend with Li Tian. However, at this distance, he has no chance to escape. In my opinion, it will be over within 3 moves. Seeing that the two of them were only 10 feet apart and Su Zimo was still motionless, as if he didn't feel any danger, many cultivators shook their heads. Su Zimo's expression was calm. He looked at Li Tian and said indifferently, This has nothing to do with you. Don't provoke me. Ha! Li Tian threw his head back and laughed, his expression wild. Suddenly, the laughter stopped abruptly. At the same time, Li Tian rushed forward and arrived in front of Su Zimo in the blink of an eye. He punched towards Su Zimo's head. His fist was burning with raging flames. The speed of this punch was so fast that it was like a falling meteorite. Its momentum was terrifying. Su Zimo raised his hand unhurriedly, but it blocked Li Tian's fist just in time. When the punch collided with Su Zimo's palm, all its power vanished like a clay ox entering the sea. For some reason, even the flames on Li Tian's fist were mostly extinguished, as though they were suppressed by something. Li Tian's expression changed slightly. Right then, a pure white flame spewed out of Su Zimo's palm and engulfed Li Tian's fist instantly. Nanming Li Fire. That was a flame technique imparted by the Vermilion Bird Saint's soul. Li Tian shrieked tragically. In the blink of an eye, his fist was burned beyond recognition by the Nanming Li Fire, revealing his white bones. What was even more frightening was that the Nanming Li Fire did not extinguish even though it was tainted by his blood. Instead, it spread along his wrist towards his arm and burned even more fiercely. Li Tian lost the initiative and was severely injured, retreating hurriedly. Su Zimo followed him like a shadow and strode forward. He did not give Li Tian any chance to catch his breath as he executed the Great Chaos Essence Palm consecutively. Li Tian could not defend against it at all. Li Tian's body stiffened. The top of his head was shattered by Su Zimo's palm. His essence spirit was destroyed and he died on the spot. In less than 10 moves, Li Tian, who was ranked first on the hunting list, was killed by Su Zimo. Jian Yu and the others were slightly shocked. Li Tian did not have the upper hand in close combat. If it was a one-on-one battle, they would not be Su Zimo's match either. This person is quite capable. Yun Ting rubbed his palms and praised, seeming to be tempted. Feng Xian, what do you think? On the other side, Elder Gu asked. Feng Xian said, Li Tian was careless. Although that flame is powerful, it's not a threat as long as he can avoid it. As for Su Zimo, he's too reckless and impulsive. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's fun to kill, but from now on he can only run around in the Archtomb. Su Zimo, to think that I've truly underestimated you. The skinny old man looked at Li Tian's corpse and said slowly, Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. As soon as the skinny old man finished speaking, his aura changed abruptly. His glabella shone and emitted a massive aura. Earth Immortal! The crowd exclaimed. No, he's not an Earth Immortal. His cultivation is still at Mystic Essence Realm, but his Essence Spirit cultivation has reached Earth Essence Realm. The surrounding cultivators quickly recognized it. Yun Ting was not surprised at all. The Dajin Celestial Nation allowed these two to enter the Archtomb as commanders. Naturally, they have their strengths. This Su Zimo is still a little impulsive. There's no way this kid can withstand the power of an Earth Immortal's Essence Spirit secret skill. The old man with the surname Go coughed. That Su Zimo is already a dead man. The skinny old man opened up his spirit consciousness and emitted the might of an Earth Immortal. Sweeping his gaze across Su Zimo and the others, he said slowly, "Since His Highness Yuanzhua allowed the two of us to enter, we naturally have our own trump cards that can control your lives. All of you watch this. You'll end up like Su Zimo for challenging the authority of the Dajin Celestial Nation." With that said, the skinny old man channeled his spirit consciousness and prepared to release his Essence Spirit secret skill to kill Su Zimo. However, he suddenly realized that Su Zimo had vanished. Su Zimo was still in his line of sight earlier on. However, in the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had vanished from the spot. "You talk too much." At that instant, an indifferent voice echoed in his ears. The next moment, the skinny old man felt a sharp pain in his head and lost consciousness before long. Right from the beginning, he did not manage to release his Essence Spirit secret skill. Behind him, Su Zimo stood there and had just retracted his finger. There was a hole in the back of the skinny old man's head that was bleeding profusely. A single finger was enough to penetrate the skinny old man's skull and shatter his Essence Spirit. Even in his death, the skinny old man could not understand why Su Zimo would appear behind him. The expressions of the other cultivators changed starkly. Nobody expected that Su Zimo would dare to attack the exalted immortal beside the Duke of the Dajin Celestial Nation. More than that, nobody expected Su Zimo to be so decisive as to kill the skinny old man with a single blow without hesitation. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 1979. The skinny old man was backed by Duke Yuanzhua and the Great Jin Immortal Empire. Nobody could challenge the authority of the Immortal Empire. Many cultivators did not even dare to think about it, let alone kill someone so decisively. "Why you got guts?" A cultivator pointed at Su Zimo in shock. Right then, another strange sound sounded from the side. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and couldn't help but gasp. Not far away, a crescent-shaped nail mark appeared on the plump old man's glabella and a streak of blood seeped out. The plump old man's gaze dimmed and his life force was depleting rapidly. He could no longer live. That was a sign of his Essence Spirit being destroyed. Who did it? Many cultivators were shocked and retreated one after another, leaving the corpses of the two old men behind. Just now, everyone's attention was on Su Zimo. They were certain that Su Zimo did not attack after killing the skinny old man. Who killed that person then? That was the scary part. Despite the death of a person in front of everyone, no one noticed the culprit. Su Zimo had a calm expression. Although others did not notice it, he saw it clearly. Among everyone present, Tang Zi was the only one who had the capabilities to kill the plump old man without anyone noticing. Tang Zi's timing was almost perfect and impeccable. Back then, the fact that the skinny old man was killed by Su Zimo caused an uproar and almost everyone's attention was on Su Zimo. The plump old man had not expected that someone would dare to attack him right beside him. There were no unnecessary movements and he was killed in a single strike as well. Even until his death, the plump old man did not see who attacked. Actually, even if he did not die and released his Essence Spirit secret skill successfully, he would not be of much threat to Su Zimo. Su Zimo's Essence Spirit had already broken through to the Earth Essence realm and surpassed the two of them. Furthermore, his Essence Spirit was protected by the Creation Lotus platform. Unless one's cultivation realm was way above his, they would not be able to hurt him at all. Of course, Tang Zi's attack saved him some trouble as well. There were many cultivators present, but only a few of them had actually seen just now in action. Not far away, Yun Ting smiled and said, This man and woman are really bold. They killed the servant of the commandery Prince Yuanzhua. I'm afraid they won't live for long. Since commandery Prince Yuanzhua isn't here, he probably doesn't know about this. One of the cultivators was puzzled. Yunting said, there's no need for Duke Yuanzhua to do anything. These two old men represent the Dajin celestial nation. The other sects and forces are only wary of the Dajin celestial nation. Now that the two of them are dead, the remaining forces no longer have any scruples. He could even use the excuse of helping the great Jin celestial nation eliminate the traitors to kill the two of them and seize the 7 Dawn immortal ginseng. At this moment, Fang Xian suddenly raised his voice and said, the person who killed the celestial kingdom's exalted immortal is the purple-clothed woman among you. Su Zimo frowned slightly and looked at Fang Xian. Fang Xian was not afraid at all. He raised his head slightly and smirked with a provocative expression. He even extended his hand and slashed across his throat, making a beheading gesture. Tang Zi also glanced at Fang Xian but retracted her gaze quickly. Even if she wanted to kill him or had other thoughts, she would not reveal them. It's you? Jian Yu and the others retreated one after another and distanced themselves from Tang Zi with wary expressions. Since her tracks were exposed, Tang Zi no longer hid. Without a word, she walked to the corpse of the fat old man and took his storage bag to search. At the same time, Su Zimo took the storage bag of the skinny old man and searched it as well. Soon, he found a teleportation talisman in the skinny old man's storage bag. He put away the talisman and looked at Tang Zi at the same time. Tang Zi happened to look over as well. Their gazes met slightly and they had a tacit understanding. Both of them had the same thoughts. The reason why they searched the storage bags of the fat and skinny old men was not for any treasures, but a way to leave the emperor's tomb. The fat and skinny old men once said that they were the only ones who had the means to leave the emperor's tomb. The most likely way to do so was through a teleportation talisman. Su Zimo and Jian Yu each obtained a teleportation talisman, which meant that they had the initiative. At the very least, they would not be trapped in the emperor's tomb. Hand it over. When Jian Yu and the others saw Su Zimo and Jian Yu's actions, they pondered for a moment and understood the reason behind it. Everyone stepped forward and surrounded Su Zimo and Tang Zi. What do you guys want? Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings and asked indifferently. Jian Yu said coldly, leave the 7 Dawn immortal ginseng and the teleportation talisman behind. Su Zimo ignored Jian Yu's threat and said, if you want to leave the emperor's tomb, follow me. When the time comes, I'll naturally bring you guys away. You killed the exalted immortals of the celestial nation, so you'll definitely die. You still want to lead us? Su Zimo, just now, you can kill the exalted immortals of the celestial nation because you caught them off guard. We've all fought our way out of the 10 Extremes prison. Do you think we're afraid of you? The remaining dozens of cultivators were filled with killing intent as they surrounded Su Zimo and Jian Yu. Caught them off guard? Su Zimo smiled and looked at the person who spoke. He shook his head and said, you're still too naive. If I wanted to kill you, even if I told you directly, you wouldn't be able to stop me. Arrogant brat. The person was enraged and attacked first. He formed a minor mystique with both hands and unleashed it. He shouted, Su Zimo die. The two minor mystiques were both offensive mystiques, and he did not intend to hold back at all. Su Zimo's expression was calm as he moved and floated toward the person. At the same time, he flicked his finger lightly. The sound of sword chi piercing through the air was heard. 2 white sword chi instantly pierced through the 2 minor mystiques that the person had formed in his hands. When the person released the mystique, only 2 balls of essence chi of heaven and earth were left. They were completely unharmed. Oh! In the distance, Yun Ting saw the 2 sword chi and his eyes brightened. He trembled and murmured, the aura of these 2 sword chi, what's wrong, your highness? Another cultivator whispered, although the killing intent of these 2 sword chi is very strong, it's definitely not as strong as your highness's sword chi. Haha. Yun Ting could not help but laugh. He was overjoyed and said, the heavens are really helping me. This trip was worth it. In the eyes of others, Su Zimo's two-sword chi were only filled with killing intent and were very powerful. However, Yun Ting knew that these two-sword chi came from the same source as the sword chi that he cultivated. The sword chi that he cultivated was one of the three famous sword arts in the upper world, the mortal slaying sword art. The other two sword arts were the heavenly slaying and earthly slaying. Among the three sword arts, the mortal slaying sword art was the most powerful. When cultivated to the extreme, one could form a peerless mystique that could turn the world upside down. All three sword arts came from the sword realm. It was said that if one could comprehend all three sword arts and master them, there would be a chance to form a peerless sword Dao divine power that could shock the world. It was extremely lethal and irreplaceable. 2K Reading Network. Chapter 1980. Two streaks of heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth and dispelled the minor divine power of the cultivator with ease. You're still far from being able to take my life. Su Zimo's tone was indifferent and his movement technique was extremely fast. He arrived in the blink of an eye and slapped the top of the cultivator's head with a flip of his palm. Bang! The person shuddered and his gaze was blank. Although he did not seem to be injured on the surface, his mind was shattered by Su Zimo's palm strike and his essence spirit was destroyed. That was what Su Zimo said before he attacked. Even if he wanted to kill you openly, you wouldn't be able to defend against it. Jian Yu and the rest had fought their way out of the 10 Extremes prison. As for Su Zimo, he was completely unknown on the hunt list. Therefore, everyone did not take Su Zimo seriously in the depths of their hearts. After Su Zimo killed 3 people, the other cultivators did not retreat at all. Instead, they were riled up and swarmed forward under Jian Yu's command. Dozens of mystic immortals attacked at the same time. It was quite a commotion. All sorts of minor divine powers, immortal arts and secret skills were formed and essence chi surged. A bolt of lightning flashed in the crowd. One of them had just leaped into the air when his body froze and a hole the size of an arm appeared in his chest. It was charred and was emitting green smoke. That person's chest was penetrated by the power of thunder. That person shrieked tragically and fell from the sky. Even if his essence spirit was not destroyed, his body was severely injured and his life force was severed. His essence spirit would not be able to last for long. Behind him, Tang Zi's figure disappeared in a flash. Some of the cultivators wanted to track Tang Zi but realized that they could not track her at all. His spirit consciousness could not lock onto Tang Zi's location at all. Even Su Zimo's divine sense, which was at the level of an earth deity, could not lock onto Tang Zi. Back when the two of them fought in the cave, the main reason why Su Zimo was able to gain the upper hand and suppress Tang Zi was because of his spirit perception and True Dragon's 9 flashes. Su Zimo's expression was indifferent as he flicked his finger gently. Hundreds of heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth and splattered in all directions with killing intent. He was already at the 9th level of the mystic origin stage. Relying on Qinglian's true body, even under the same cultivation level, his vital chi was many times purer and more condensed than other cultivators. Therefore, just the killing power of a single strand of sword chi was enough to break a secret technique. If Su Zimo were to truly release thousands of heaven-slaying sword chi, it would be devastating and not many cultivators around the lake would be able to survive. In the distance, Yun Ting looked at this scene and nodded slightly. The heaven-slaying sword technique has not been forgotten in this person's hands. When the heavens emit killing intent, the stars are shifted. It is indeed extraordinary. A cultivator behind Yun Ting said with a smile, no matter how strong this person's heaven-slaying sword art is, he can't compare to your highness human-slaying sword art. Of course. Yun Ting had a proud expression. Even if this person grasps the heaven and earth-slaying sword arts, he won't be able to match the sharpness of my human-slaying sword art, let alone a single heaven-slaying sword art. There's no need to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Leave something as such to us. Another person said in a deep voice, when this person is exhausted, we'll head forward and capture him alive to hand him over to your highness. There's no need. Yun Ting replied indifferently, I'll snatch the heaven-slaying sword art back personally. Your Highness, he's just a servant. Why must you? Before that person could finish, Yun Ting waved his hand and interrupted him. Who do you think I am? Yun Ting glared at that person. If he wants the heaven-slaying sword art, I'll naturally attack him openly. I, Yun Ting, will not take advantage of others and bully others with numbers. The other cultivators lowered their heads and did not dare to say anything else. On the other side, in the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom, Fang Xian's battle intent surged as though he could not hold it in any longer. He asked in a deep voice, "Exalted Immortal, let me attack. I'll definitely be able to kill this person with lightning speed and retrieve the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng. Let's wait a little longer." "There's no hurry," the old man with the surname Gu said. "This lad has some tricks up his sleeves. These dozens of cultivators are not a match for him either. You'll only be confident if you attack after he's exhausted for a while." Fang Xian took a deep breath of air and continued watching the battle. On the battlefield, Su Zimo released the heaven-slaying sword art and dispelled all sorts of mystic skills with a flick of his fingers. Relying on the heaven's feet and the earth traversing golden light, he shuttled through the crowd with ease. His seemingly simple punches and kicks contained terrifying explosive power. Even if Qinglian's true body did not use her bloodline and merely relied on her physical strength, she could take on Khanate mystic-grade dermic treasures head-on. Cultivators could not use dermic treasures or weapons in the Emperor's tomb, and Su Zimo was a humanoid Khanate mystic-grade dermic treasure who could defend against him. Bang, bang, bang. As though he was taking a stroll, Su Zimo charged left and right and nobody could stop him. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the dozens of mystic immortals were killed by him. A small portion of them died in the chaos. Even in death, they did not know who had killed them. This was the first time Su Zimo and Tang Zi had truly joined forces, but they had great chemistry with each other. Su Zimo fought with dozens of cultivators head-on on the battlefield. Tang Zi, on the other hand, used her unpredictable movement technique and concealment technique to blend into the crowd. She would occasionally appear and rarely attack. However, every time she attacked, a cultivator would definitely die. Neither of them was on the hunting list, but now they had killed most of the cultivators on the hunting list. There were not many left. The remaining few people finally felt fear and retreated one after another. However, at this moment, the cultivators from the various sects and factions who were originally watching also surged towards this place like a tidal wave. Most of them were from some small sects and factions. Previously, the fat and thin old men were probably from the Great Jin Celestial Kingdom and were considered exalted immortals. No matter how bold they would not dare to attack. However, now that the fat and thin old men were dead, Su Zimo and the rest were only mystic immortals from the lower world. Moreover, they were the murderers of the fat and thin old men. Many cultivators took this opportunity to rush forward, wanting to seize the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng in the chaos. In the distance, Elder Gu laughed strangely and said, "With so many people rushing forward, even if that Su Zimo has 3 heads and 6 arms, it will be difficult for him to escape unscathed. Fang Xian, get ready. Listen to my command and attack at any time." "Yes, sir," Fang Xian replied in a low voice. On the other side, a cultivator from the Zishuan Celestial Kingdom frowned and said, "Your Highness, I'm afraid that Su Zimo is doomed." Yun Ting kept his hands behind his back and remained silent. On the battlefield, Su Zimo faced the cultivators rushing towards him from all directions without any fear. In fact, there was not even a ripple in his eyes. "Hey, let's retreat first. We can't fight head-on." Tang Zi's voice rang in Su Zimo's mind. "You go first. Be careful." Su Zimo replied. If it were outside, many cultivators might have some Dharma treasures or trump cards, and he might be a little wary. However, in the Emperor's tomb, Su Zimo was confident that he could defeat everyone with just his physical body, immortal arts, and divine abilities. Moreover, the Emperor's tomb's environment was complicated, and every step was filled with danger. If he encountered some unknown creatures in the Emperor's tomb while retreating, he might be in danger. Chapter 1981. Hand over the Immortal Ginseng. How can you keep such a supreme treasure to yourself? Some of the cultivators did not hide their intentions and hollered. Many cultivators swarmed over aggressively. Even though they could not use any Dharma treasures or weapons, the simultaneous descent of many mystic powers and secret skills was earth-shattering and terrifying. Suddenly, a sharp howl sounded from the crowd. It was extremely ear-piercing and pierced through metal and rocks, as though it could tear apart the eardrums of many cultivators. That was the immortal whale sound. Tang Zi did not leave. The cultivators around Tang Zi shuddered and their ears hurt as blood spewed out of their mouths. Even the cultivators who were further away were shocked. The mystic powers and secret skills that they had just condensed became unstable and swayed slightly. Legend has it that the bloodline of the Tabu Kuan Peng flowed in the immortal whale's body. With its massive body, its whale sound would be extremely lethal. Tang Zi stood in the air and howled into the skies. A gigantic immortal whale seemed to have appeared above her head, swimming in the waves and slapping the water surface, creating massive waves as it let out whale sounds continuously. The immortal whale sound seemed to have materialized. With Tang Zi as the center, it shook the void and spread in all directions. Right then, another strange roar sounded from not far away. It was mighty, as though thousands of elephants were trumpeting at the same time, shaking the heavens and earth. Yun Ting glanced sideways. Far away, a black-robed man from the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom leaped into the air. His black hair danced wildly as he roared in Tang Zi's direction. That was Fang Xian. Thousands of gigantic elephants vaguely appeared beneath Fang Xian's feet. They swung their trunks and pierced their tusks into the skies as they trumpeted. If the immortal whale was the overlord of the ocean, the divine elephants were the gods of the land. The immortal whale sound and myriad elephants trumpeting were two sound domain secret skills that clashed in midair. Neither of them was willing to back down. Although it was difficult to determine who was superior between the two sound domain secret skills, however, because of Fang Xian's attack, the cultivators who were surrounding Su Zimo were invigorated and were freed from the pain of the immortal whale sound. Interesting. Yun Ting had been watching from afar, not intending to make a move. However, at this moment, the collision of the two great sound domain secret arts caused his bloodline to become somewhat restless, unable to calm down. I didn't expect to meet some decent opponents in the Mystic Yuan realm. Yun Ting let out a hearty laugh. He pinched his fingers together and slashed down in the direction of the battlefield. He shouted 3 times in a row, "Break! Break! Break!" Yun Ting's voice was a lot weaker than the immortal whale roar and the 10,000 mammoths' simultaneous roar. However, his 3 shouts had formed 3 long swords in the air. They were sharp and full of killing intent. Condensing swords with sound. Such natural talent in the sword Dao was truly shocking and beyond imagination. Even Fang Xian had a grave expression as he withdrew the contempt in his eyes. Originally, he really didn't think much of Yun Ting. But only at this moment did he realize that this was an extremely formidable opponent. The 3 sound swords tore through the air, not fearing the confrontation between the immortal whale roar and 10,000 elephants' roar in unison as they descended from the sky. It was as though a piece of cloth was torn apart by a sharp weapon. The 2 sound domains of the immortal whale roar and 10,000 mammoths' simultaneous roar were split into 2 by Yun Ting's 3 sound swords. Su Zimo's eyes shone with a ferocious glint. Initially, he did not intend to use the Dragon Roar secret skill. That was one of his trump cards. He would not use it unless he had no other choice. However, at this moment, the 3 sound domain secret skills descended at the same time and collided in his ears, causing the Qinglian bloodline in his body to boil and gush out. If he continued holding on, the Qinglian bloodline would be exposed. Furthermore, there was a hint of pride in the depths of Su Zimo's heart. He wanted to compete with the paragons of the world. "All of you, get lost," Su Zimo said slowly. At the last word, he burst forth with the Dragon Roar secret skill. Instantly, the world quaked. A divine dragon with shimmering green scales appeared beside Su Zimo. Its horns were towering and it was dignified as it coiled up and roared into the skies. This mystical dragon was extremely lifelike. As it roared, its whiskers danced, and the scales on its body stood up slightly. Its entire body swelled up by a large size. That dragon roar was way too terrifying and seemed to contain a supreme will. Suddenly, the immortal whale in midair leaped and dove into the sea, vanishing. Under the control of Su Zimo's will, the dragon roar secret skill had the least impact on Tang Zi. As for the 10,000 mammoths beneath Fang Xian's feet, all of them shattered and dissipated into the world against the reverberation of the dragon roar. Fang Xian's body swayed slightly, but he stabilized himself before long. The 3 sound swords lasted for a little longer, but they shattered and turned into nothingness as well. The dragon roar secret skill was a fusion of many secret skills such as Thunderclap Kill, Dragon Phoenix Roar, and Azure Dragon Roar. Every single sound domain secret skill was enough to sweep through all those of the same cultivation realm individually. It was naturally imaginable how terrifying the might of those secret skills could be when they were fused together. When the Dragon Roar secret skill was released, the world went silent and everything went silent. Dragon Roar technique? Yun Ting did not move at all as he narrowed his gaze and murmured softly. However, he shook his head before long. That's not right. There seems to be other dermic formulations within that sound domain secret skill. There's also the power of thunder. Be it Fang Xian or Yun Ting, they were rather far away to begin with. Coupled with their strong Qi blood physique, Su Zimo's Dragon Roar secret skill did not affect them at all. However, on the battlefield, many cultivators who attacked Su Zimo were in trouble. First, they were baptized by the immortal whale roar. Immediately after, they were struck by the myriad elephant roar. Thereafter, it was Yun Ting's 3 sound swords. Most of the cultivators on the battlefield could not withstand the descent of those 3 sound domain secret skills. The Dragon Roar secret skill was even more terrifying. The moment it was released, some of the cultivators closest to Su Zimo exploded and died on the spot. The bodies and bloodlines of those cultivators were severely injured by the 3 sound domain secret skills. If they had retreated in time, they might have been able to recover. However, the Dragon Roar secret skill was like a violent storm that destroyed them instantly. Some of the cultivators that were further away fell from midair one after another. Some of them fell limply to the ground with bloodstains on their faces. They looked frightening and were almost destroyed by the power of the Dragon Roar secret skill. Before the mystic powers and secret skills in midair could descend, they were destroyed by the 4 sound domain secret skills. Those that could enter the Emperor's tomb were all mystic essence experts that were carefully selected. However, it was only when they truly fought that many cultivators realized that the difference between them was like the difference between clouds and mud, even though they were both at grade 9 mystic immortal. Fang Xian's eyes surged with battle intent as he strode toward Su Zimo. There were 4 cultivators, 3 men and 1 woman. They split into 4 directions and surrounded Su Zimo. After the 4 sound domain secret skills, there were not many cultivators who still had the strength to fight. This showed how powerful the 3 men and 1 woman were. Be careful. They're from the 4 major immortal sects. Tang Zi's voice rang in Su Zimo's mind. Chapter 1982. Su Zimo did not know much about the 4 major immortal sects. This was the first time he had heard of them during the battle on Longyuan planet. In the heaven world, the sects were divided into 3 levels: mystic, earthly, and heavenly. Normally, those who ascended from the lower world would not even have the chance to enter a mystic sect. The 4 major immortal sects were heavenly sects on the divine cloud continent. One could only imagine how powerful they were. One of the 3 men was bald, fat, and looked like a monk. The other was tanned, tall, and had short hair. He looked like a walking iron tower made of iron. The third was a middle-aged man. He wore a Taoist hat, and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. The last woman was wearing a blue dress. Her lips were scarlet, and there was even a tinge of purplish green. She looked a little scary. The fact that the 4 of them could withstand the impact of the 4 sound domain secret techniques was enough to prove their strength. Although Su Zimo was confident that he could defeat opponents of the same level as him, he did not dare to be careless. He let out a long roar and his aura surged. On the other side, A flustered figure was stumbling toward Yunting. It was Jinyu, who had just escaped death. Tang Zi, Feng Xian, and Yunting's sound domain secret techniques were already the limit of what he could withstand. Su Zimo's dragon roar secret technique was unleashed. His blood flowed backward, and his organs were shaken. He almost died on the spot. "Your Highness, save me." Although Jinyu did not know Yunting, he recognized the token on Yunting's waist. That was an item that only those with the royal bloodline of the Zishuan Celestial Kingdom were qualified to wear. Before Jinyu could reach Yunting, he had already shouted for help. Yunting looked indifferent. He glanced at Jinyu and said, "He didn't even care about you. If you didn't provoke him, you wouldn't have gotten yourself killed." "Your Highness, you're kind. I didn't know that this person was so ruthless and unscrupulous. He even dared to kill the exalted immortal by Duke Yuanzua's side. What else can he not do?" Jinyu was indignant. He said hatefully, "When I return to the Great Jin Celestial Kingdom, I'll definitely report this to Duke Yuanzua." Yunting sneered and suddenly attacked without warning. Jinyu was injured. Even if he was at his best, he would not be able to stop Yunting's attack. "Your Highness," Jinyu was held by Yunting by the back of his neck. His entire body was suspended in the air like a chick that had been caught. His expression was one of panic as he struggled helplessly. Yunting said calmly, "I hate snitches the most. You don't deserve to use a sword." As soon as he finished speaking, Yunting clasped two fingers together and chopped down. Puchi. A bloody head was chopped off by Yunting's two fingers. His sword fingers were even sharper than a real sword. On the other side, the people of the four major celestial sects were also fighting Su Zimo. The bald monk was the first to arrive. He laughed heartily and said, "Benefactor, let me send you to heaven." The bald monk swung his arms, which seemed to be covered with a thick layer of gold foil. They flickered with light and smashed down toward Su Zimo. These two arms were like two thick and hard rods. They were powerful, heavy, and extremely ferocious. Following closely behind, the iron towering man also approached. He stood tall and was half a body taller than Su Zimo. Bang! The iron towering man's roar was like a clap of thunder. He stretched out his arm, clenched it into a fist, and punched towards Su Zimo's head from above. The iron towering man's clenched fist was like a black iron hammer. It had sharp edges and was filled with a metallic luster. Be it the bald monk or the iron towering man, both of them were body tempering experts. Their physical bodies were shockingly strong. On the other side, the middle-aged Taoist priest waved his wide sleeves and shouted, "Freeze!" It was a minor mystique, the immobilization spell. The immobilization spell was one of the most common minor mystiques. When understood to the extreme, it could evolve into a peerless mystique, the space freeze. Although the immobilization spell was common, everyone's primordial spirit was different in terms of purity, cultivation realm, and strength. Therefore, the effects of the immobilization spell were different. Su Zimo's primordial spirit had already reached earthly origin realm, which was a realm higher than cultivators of the same level. Therefore, the immobilization spell was completely ineffective against him. The middle-aged Taoist priest was from one of the four major immortal sects. However, the middle-aged Taoist priest had a backup plan. The moment he released the fixed body art, his two wide sleeves arrived instantly and wrapped around Su Zimo tightly a few times. The immobilization spell was only the first move. The next move was the killing move. The last one was the woman in the blue dress. Although she was the slowest, her 10 long fingernails were purple-green in color and emitted a foul smell. Deadly poison. The woman in blue reached out with her sharp fingernails that resembled 10 poisonous swords, grabbing towards Su Zimo's body. The powerful cultivators of the four major immortal sects attacked at the same time. Although the four of them had never met before and this was the first time they had worked together, their cooperation was perfect. This was the tacit understanding between the top cultivators. Seeing this, Yunting nodded slightly and said softly, "Although the four of them are just servants of the four major immortal sects, their skills are indeed not weak. I'm afraid only I can neutralize such an attack." On the battlefield, Tang Zi's heart skipped a beat when she saw this. With her eyesight, she could naturally see how terrifying the joint attack of the powerful cultivators of the four major immortal sects was. At the very least, it would be difficult for her to escape unscathed if she was in Su Zimo's position. Tang Zi's figure moved. She concealed her figure and sneaked toward the middle-aged Taoist priest. As long as she could kill one of them, the remaining three would be much easier. Hee, where are you going? At this moment, a cold laugh came from the side. Following that, Tang Zi felt a gust of wind blowing by her ear. It was so strong that it hurt her ears. What was even more terrifying was that this person had blocked all of Tang Zi's escape routes. An expert, Tang Zi did not dare to be careless. She quickly stopped and dodged the other party's killing move. A man in black blocked her path. It was Feng Xian from the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom. Tang Zi frowned slightly. It would be difficult to determine the winner in a short time if the two of them fought head-on. However, this delay allowed Su Zimo to fall into the torrential attacks of the four powerful cultivators on the other side of the battlefield. Su Zimo's gaze was like a torch as he took a deep breath. His chest puffed up and he seemed to have transformed into an anaconda that could devour the sun and moon. That was a secret skill from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Shing! Instantly, Su Zimo's sleeves were ripped apart and turned into countless rags that fell to the ground. The middle-aged Taoist priest was stunned. He had killed countless paragons with this move of his. To think that it would be countered so easily today. Scram! The massive amount of essence qi accumulated in Su Zimo's chest burst forth suddenly as he roared. Su Zimo released the great chaos essence palm with his left hand and it seemed like a gigantic millstone that crushed towards the bald monk's arms. At the same time, he swiped his right hand across his chest and clenched it into a fist. His flesh expanded and he formed a gigantic seal that smashed against the iron fist of the towering man. Boom! With a loud bang, the bald monk's expression changed drastically. He quickly retreated. The golden foil on his arms had been shattered by the great chaos essence palm. Bang! The two fists collided. Flesh and blood collided and bones scraped against each other. The towering man's black face quickly turned red. Ah! The towering man roared. He looked like he was in pain as he took 3 steps back. Chapter 1983. The Iron Towering Man took 3 steps back, each step leaving a deep footprint on the ground. In the blink of an eye, 3 of the experts of the 4 major immortal sects had retreated. At the same time, the blue-dressed woman's killing move descended as well. Su Zimo did not turn back at all. As though he had eyes on the back of his head, he clasped his fingers together to form a sword art and slashed behind him. Condensing the heaven-slaying sword art, at least 100 streams of sword chi surged out at the same time and gathered into a long sword. Sensing the terror of the long sword, the blue-dressed woman's expression changed starkly. She stopped in her tracks hurriedly and retreated. She wanted to stop but was still half a step too late. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing could be heard. All 10 of the blue-dressed woman's fingernails were severed at the waist by the heaven-slaying sword chi. Pieces of fingernails scattered on the ground with a purplish-green poisonous glint. Against the encirclement of the experts of the 4 major immortal sects, Su Zimo counterattacked forcefully and forced all 4 of them to retreat. On the other side, Tang Zi, who was already fighting with Feng Xian, was relieved for the time being. Haha. Su Zimo laughed and looked at the 4 of them disdainfully. Not bad. You guys are quite capable to be able to escape unscathed from me. How arrogant! The middle-aged Dao master's expression darkened as he hollered. On the other hand, the bald monk and the other 3 remained silent. Their expressions were somewhat ugly. Su Zimo's words were indeed ear-piercing and arrogant. However, the 3 of them knew that Su Zimo's words were not false at all. The moment the bald monk collided with the great chaos essence palm, he sensed that something was amiss and retreated in time to avoid being injured. If he had retreated any slower, both of his arms might have been smashed into a pulp by the great chaos essence palm. The reason why the towering man could withstand Su Zimo's punch was because he had a secret technique that transferred the power of his opponent's attack into the ground through his body. That was the reason why his 3 steps left such deep footprints on the ground. The blue-dressed woman was even more dangerous. She was proficient in the Tao of poison and the power of her bloodline. She was far inferior to the bald monk and the iron-towering man. She was even weaker than Su Zimo. If she had dodged slightly slower earlier on, both her arms would have been severed by the heaven-slaying sword Qi. The 4 of them were from the 4 major immortal sects. But, if a cultivator could enter an immortal sect, even if they were the most lowly and lowly of servants, they should still far surpass their peers. They did not expect to meet such a ruthless person in the monarch tomb. On the other side, Yun Ting's expression became somewhat complicated. Earlier, he had only said that he could resolve the siege of the 4 of them. Unexpectedly, not only did Su Zimo neutralize the attack, he even counterattacked and almost injured the 4 major celestial sects. On the other side, Tang Zi and Fang Xian continued to fight, and it was hard to determine the victor. Although Tang Zi cultivated the Tao of assassination, her physique and bloodline were extraordinary. Her foundation was extremely solid. Even if she fought against any heaven's favorites, she wouldn't be at a disadvantage. The more Fang Xian fought, the more shocked he became. He had ascended after transcending the 49 heavenly tribulations and was invincible in the lower world. Even when he ascended to the upper world, he had not encountered any opponents. Originally, he thought that perhaps only Yun Ting, Su Zimo, and the 4 major celestial sects experts could threaten him. He did not take Tang Zi seriously at all. He did not expect that this ordinary-looking woman in front of him would be so troublesome and terrifying. Her attacks were unpredictable and all of them were killing moves. There were a few times when she almost injured him severely. Where did she come from? Fang Xian cursed in his heart. At that moment, a jade-green light suddenly burst forth from the distant horizon. It soared into the sky but soon disappeared. Many cultivators were shocked and fell into deep thought. Su Zimo also saw the green light. Could it be a jade talisman? No one had any clues about the jade talisman. Now that this green light suddenly appeared, it immediately made everyone think. After a short silence, cultivators quickly moved and sped in the direction of the jade talisman. Your Highness, what should we do? A cultivator in the Zishuan celestial kingdom asked softly. Let's go over there and take a look first. I'm determined to get the jade talisman and the human-slaying sword art. Yun Ting pondered for a while and said, let's find the jade talisman first. Su Zimo will not be lost. After a pause, Yun Ting smiled and said, in my opinion, no one in the Arch Tomb can stop him except for me. Your Highness, you seem to think highly of him? Someone behind Yun Ting understood the meaning behind his words. Yun Ting nodded slightly and said, this person is very talented and cultivates the human-slaying sword art. He's somewhat fated with me. However, he ascended from the lower world. It'll be difficult for him to stand out in the great Jin celestial kingdom. Only by following me can he become famous in the 9 heavens. That cultivator smiled and said, in the upper world, there's almost no one like your Highness who treats all cultivators in the lower world equally. If your Highness can recruit this person, it'll be his fortune. Yun Ting shook his head and said with a smile, that might not be the case. People with such talent and battle prowess are all monstrous geniuses. They're proud and arrogant, so it'll be difficult to recruit them. I have to defeat him and convince him wholeheartedly before I can take him under my wing. After saying that, Yun Ting glanced at Su Zimo again and led the cultivators of the Zishuan celestial kingdom in the direction of the green light. Fang Xian, don't bother about that woman. Go and find the jade talisman first. Don't let anyone take the initiative. Elder Ji's voice rang in Fang Xian's mind. Bang! On the battlefield, Fang Xian clashed with Tang Zi and retreated. He shook off the lightning on his fist and said with a cold smile, I'm not going to play with you anymore. Let's fight again next time. You'll be dead next time. Tang Zi said indifferently. Ha! Fang Xian laughed. You want to kill me? You're too weak. After saying that, Fang Xian turned around and returned to Elder Ji's side. He left with the people of the Flaming Sun Celestial Kingdom. The cultivators of the four major celestial sects who were confronting Su Zimo also wanted to retreat. The mission given to them by their sects was to find the Jade Talisman, not the Seven Dawn Celestial Ginseng. If they continued to fight with Su Zimo here, they would lose a lot for a small gain. Even if they managed to get the Seven Dawn Celestial Ginseng, they wouldn't be punished when they returned. At the thought of this, the cultivators of the four major celestial sects looked at each other and retreated at the same time. They quickly left with the other cultivators of their sections. Tang Zi came to Su Zimo's side. More than 100 people from the Great Jin Celestial Kingdom had entered the Emperor's tomb. Now, only the two of them were left. It seems like everyone has the same goal. We're all after the Jade Talisman. Su Zimo murmured. Tang Zi nodded as a silent agreement. Su Zimo frowned. I wonder what's the secret of the Jade Talisman that so many sects are after it. In the eyes of these sects, it's even more important than the Seven Dawn Celestial Ginseng. Tang Zi said, only someone with a high status like Yun Ting would know such a secret. Let's go and take a look, Su Zimo said in a deep voice. Even without the Duke of Yuan's arrangement, he wanted to see what the Jade Talisman looked like and what secrets it hid. Tang Zi didn't say anything. She just followed Su Zimo silently. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 1984. Su Zimo and Tang Zi followed the traces of the cultivators and sped along. After walking for about half a day, they saw a huge building in the sky ahead. This should be a palace. Although it was dilapidated, looking from afar, they could still feel its grandeur. There were some cultivators wandering around the palace, as if they were looking for something. Most of the cultivators had already entered the main hall. Su Zimo and Tang Zi approached the palace and took a quick look, but they could not see anything special about it. The two of them did not waste time outside and entered the palace. In front of them was a huge and spacious square, paved with blue stone. There were several stone paths that separated the herb gardens. However, there were no more immortal herbs in these herb gardens, only some withered leaves. Even the soil in these herb gardens was corroded by the Emperor's tomb's curse and had a strange green color. This square was huge. Even with Su Zimo's eyesight, he could not see the boundaries of the square. The two of them followed the stone path, passed through the herb gardens, and continued forward. Along the way, they met some cultivators walking around the square. This palace is probably one of the immortal Emperor's palaces back then. I wonder if there are any treasures? There must be treasures. Unfortunately, they have been corroded by the curse for countless years and are all useless. I heard that the side halls on the left and right have some rare treasures, elixirs, weapons, and dharma treasures. It's a pity that none of them are usable. If that's not the case, every blade of grass, every tree, every brick, and every tile in this palace would be incredible treasures. Anyway, we can't enter the main hall for the time being. Let's continue looking. If we're lucky and find some treasures, we'll have profited. Su Zimo's ears twitched and vaguely heard whispers from around the square. The cultivators outside the palace were probably trying their luck to find some treasures. However, he did not know why they said that they could not enter the main hall for the time being. Su Zimo and Tang Zi continued forward. Not long after, they finally passed through the entire square. At the end of the square stood the main hall of the palace. Thousands of cultivators were gathered in front of the main hall. All of them were staring at the gate of the main hall. Some of them were even discussing in hushed tones. Su Zimo and Shermu stepped forward to take a look. They saw that the floor of the main hall's entrance was engraved with dense and complex patterns, flickering with a faint light. It's a formation, Tang Zi said in a low voice. Su Zimo nodded and stared at the array in front of the main hall for a while, feeling a little dizzy. This array was too complicated. With his attainments in array formations, he could not solve it at all. However, at this moment, a young man was standing at the edge of the array in front of the main hall. This person had a confident expression and was in high spirits. Sometimes he would stop and ponder, sometimes he would quicken his pace, and sometimes he would flick out strands of origin qi into the grand formation. This person was the young duke of the Zixian Immortal Kingdom, Yun Ting. Every time Yun Ting attacked, The formation would shake slightly and the formation runes would flicker. Furthermore, the light of this grand array was clearly gradually dimming. Yun Ting was trying to break the formation. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before this grand array was broken. Su Zimo could sense that this Yun Ting was very strong. In fact, he could even smell a trace of danger from this person. Even if this person had a noble status and unlimited resources, cultivating to the 9th level of the mystic essence realm at the age of 200 was truly terrifying. What was even more terrifying was that this person's attainments in array formations were so profound as well. One had to know that there was a limit to a person's strength. Even if one were to cultivate diligently for more than 200 years, they might not be able to reach the 9th level of the mystic essence realm. Furthermore, this person had to split his attention to cultivate the Tao of array formations. Why must we go through the entrance of the main hall? Is there no other entrance? This main hall is dilapidated and on the verge of collapse. I'm afraid it can't even withstand a single punch from me. A cultivator in the crowd muttered. Foo-foo. A scoff sounded from the side. You can go ahead and give it a try. The main hall is surrounded by restrictions. You'll definitely die if you barge in. Do you see those corpses? That's the outcome. Instantly, the person who spoke first withered and did not dare to make a sound. Breaking formations takes a huge toll on one's essence spirit. That royal king sure is bold. He's not afraid of being exhausted and encountering danger. What's his status? Almost everyone in the emperor's tomb is of lowly status. Who would dare to fight him? Furthermore, even if his essence spirit is exhausted, he should be able to dominate all those of the same cultivation realm and be invincible. In the crowd, Feng Xian watched everything coldly and curled his lips slightly. That person is young after all. He's way too conceited and doesn't know how to restrain himself. Su Zimo watched for a moment before leaving the crowd. Where are you going? Tang Zi asked. Su Zimo replied, this formation is hard to break in a short period of time. I intend to check out the side halls on both sides. I'm not going. Tang Zi did not move. She wanted to charge into the main hall the moment the formation was broken so that she could gain the upper hand. Su Zimo nodded and turned to head towards the side hall. There were no restrictions on this side hall and the door was wide open. It was a mess inside. It was clear that many cultivators had ransacked it. Initially, there were many divine weapons and Dharma treasures placed in this side hall. Sabers, spears, swords, halberds, bells, tripods, cauldrons, mirrors. There were ordinary weapons and exotic Dharma treasures. Everything was there. However, at that moment, most of the divine weapons and Dharma treasures were scattered all over the ground. To be precise, those were no longer divine weapons and Dharma treasures. Under the corrosion of the curse of the Emperor's tomb, those divine weapons and Dharma treasures had long been reduced to a pile of scrap metal. In fact, those divine weapons and Dharma treasures were not of high grades to begin with. At the very least, they were not at the level of spirit-channeling Dharma treasures. That was because the hell-suppressing cauldron was still refining the molten metal in the cauldron without any activity. There were still some cultivators loitering in this side hall, looking for treasures that were left behind. Some of the cultivators even fought one another because of a broken sword. Su Zimo searched carefully and found nothing. He then walked towards the side hall on the opposite side. While the side hall earlier on stored divine weapons and Dharma treasures, this side hall originally stored elixirs and miraculous medicines. The medicine cabinets in the side hall were all over the ground and the bottles and jars on them were scattered all over the ground as well. The stoppers of many of the medicine bottles were pulled open and the elixirs within rolled out. Su Zimo picked up a random elixir and twisted it gently with his finger, turning it into ashes. After countless years, the medicinal power and spirit chi within had long dissipated. Even if there were elixirs that were perfectly preserved, they would be tainted with the curse of the Emperor's tomb. If they were swallowed, it would be no different from suicide. Su Zimo circled around the side hall. After finding nothing, he prepared to leave. Just as he passed by a dilapidated wall, the hell-suppressing cauldron vibrated. Chapter 1985. Su Zimo paused in his tracks and frowned slightly. There were elixirs and elixirs in this side hall? Why would the health-suppressing tripod have such a reaction? The health-suppressing tripod had always only devoured spirit treasures and had never been interested in elixirs. Furthermore, the elixirs here were tainted by the curse and had long lost their medicinal properties. They were of no value. However, the abnormality in his consciousness was extremely obvious and could not be an illusion. To be precise, it was even greater than the reaction of the health-suppressing tripod when it encountered a spirit treasure. Su Zimo began searching carefully beneath the ruins. Beneath his feet was a pile of dust and debris that buried a pile of useless items. All sorts of elixirs were mixed in the mud and were almost indistinguishable. Su Zimo bent down and searched carefully. This area wasn't big, but there was a lot of junk. There were broken stone tables, abandoned bronze lamps, and many broken pots and porcelain pieces. Su Zimo searched for a long time but could not find anything worthy of the attention of the health-suppressing tripod. After pondering for a moment, his gaze shifted back to the bronze lamp from before. The bronze lamp had a simple design and was extremely common. There was nothing exquisite about it, and it was mostly buried in the mud. It should have been an ordinary illumination item that was embedded into the walls of this side hall. Furthermore, the exposed parts of the bronze lamp were covered in a layer of green spots. It was clear that it was corroded by the curse of the Emperor's tomb. That was the reason why Su Zimo did not pay much attention to the bronze lamp when he first caught sight of it and swept his gaze past it. At this moment, he approached the antique bronze lamp and bent down, wanting to pull the antique bronze lamp out of the ground. As soon as his finger made contact with the ancient bronze lamp, his body trembled, and his mind went blank. Suddenly, a strong and strange suction force burst forth from the bronze lamp. Su Zimo felt as though his essence spirit in his consciousness was about to leave his body and enter the bronze lamp. The creation lotus platform sensed danger and shone brightly. Instantly, streams of jade green light burst forth from the 81 lotus holes and turned into thin threads that wrapped around Su Zimo's essence spirit and fixed it on the lotus platform. Even so, the suction force was still extremely strong. Pang pang pang. After a short stalemate, the green threads on Su Zimo's essence spirit were all severed. Even the lotus platform of creation could not withstand this power. Suddenly, in Su Zimo's sea of consciousness, there was a vast sound of Sanskrit. There were actually many phantoms of Buddhas that appeared, chanting Buddhist scriptures loudly. The content of the sutra was precisely the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. Around Su Zimo's primordial spirit, Sanskrit characters appeared one after another, glittering with golden light, dignified and mysterious, forming a Sanskrit barrier. Strangely enough, after the phantoms of the Buddhas appeared and the Buddhist scriptures rang out, the strange suction force gradually weakened, and the attack was not as strong as before. However, the Prajna Nirvana Sutra was incomplete. After the Buddhas chanted for a while, their voices stopped. The golden Sanskrit characters around them also faded rapidly. The suction force from the ancient bronze lamp increased once again. Su Zimo's consciousness had already regained a brief moment of clarity. He hurriedly retracted his palm and took half a step back with a shocked expression. What was that ancient bronze lamp? It nearly devoured his primordial spirit. Even the lotus platform of creation could not protect him. If not for the fact that he had cultivated half of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra and caused the phantoms of the Buddhas to appear to chant the sutra, he might have died without knowing why. This thing was truly sinister and could not be touched at all. Su Zimo waved his sleeves and wiped away the mud around the ancient bronze lamp, gradually revealing its true appearance. Su Zimo's gaze froze as he looked at the lower half of the ancient bronze lamp that was buried in the mud and frowned slightly. The part of the ancient bronze lamp that was exposed to the outside was covered in green spots, but the part that was buried was dark yellow in color, without a single green spot. Everything in the Emperor's tomb was corroded by the curse, and the soil beneath his feet was not spared either. Logically speaking, even if the ancient bronze lamp was buried in the soil, it should have been corroded by the curse of the Emperor's tomb. However, the situation of the ancient bronze lamp was rather strange. Su Zimo stared at the green spots on the ancient bronze lamp for a while and gradually discovered something amiss. If he was not wrong, the green spots on the ancient bronze should not be caused by the curse of the emperor's tomb, but a type of copper rust. In other words, the ancient bronze lamp was not corroded by the curse after being in the emperor's tomb for countless years. In the emperor's tomb, even spirit-dermic treasures could not withstand the corrosion of the emperor's tomb's curse. Up till now, Su Zimo's hell-suppressing tripod was the only one that was not tainted by the emperor's tomb's curse. In other words, the ancient bronze lamp was definitely better than a spirit-dermic treasure. There was a high chance that it was a pure yang spirit treasure or a grotto heaven spirit treasure. At that thought, Su Zimo was secretly delighted. If that was the case, there was a chance that the fourth wall of the hell-suppressing tripod could be repaired after devouring and refining the ancient bronze lamp. Su Zimo looked around, and when he realized that there was no one else in the side hall, he took out the hell-suppressing tripod. The hell-suppressing tripod was in his consciousness, and he did not dare to throw the ancient bronze lamp into it. In fact, he did not even dare to use his spirit consciousness to move the ancient bronze lamp, afraid that the previous dangerous situation would occur again. Carefully, Su Zimo circulated the Perfection of Wisdom Nirvana Sutra and covered his sleeves with a faint layer of golden Buddhist light. Thereafter, he flicked his sleeves and swept up the ancient bronze lamp on the ground, tossing it into the hell-suppressing tripod. With a plop, the ancient bronze lamp fell into the red-hot molten iron in the cauldron, disappearing from sight. Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief and was about to put away the hell-suppressing tripod when he heard a splash. The molten iron in the tripod surged, and the ancient bronze lamp floated up once more. Immediately after, the hell-suppressing tripod shook continuously and the molten iron rippled, throwing the ancient bronze lamp out of the tripod and onto the ground. Su Zimo was stunned and dumbfounded. The hell-suppressing tripod spat out the ancient bronze lamp? After spinning around in the hell-suppressing tripod and being cleansed, the ancient bronze lamp was still intact and seemed to have turned even more mysterious. The green spots on the ancient bronze lamp had already been washed away by the molten iron in the tripod, and it returned to its original bronze color. Even the hell-suppressing tripod can't swallow this thing? Su Zimo stared at the ancient bronze lamp, and his eyes flickered in deep thought. This ancient bronze lamp might be even more valuable than he had imagined. After washing away the green spots on it, a word was vaguely engraved on the top of the lamp that stored the oil. Su Zimo walked closer and took a closer look before murmuring softly, "Soul." The word, "soul," was engraved on the lamp, and it was written in Sanskrit. That was the reason why Su Zimo did not recognize it immediately. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo took out a new storage bag and circulated the Perfection of Wisdom Nirvana Sutra according to the same method as before. He used his sleeves to keep the ancient bronze lamp in his storage bag and stored it separately. He still didn't know where this thing came from or what it was used for. However, something that even the hell-suppressing tripod could not swallow was definitely not ordinary. Right then, a commotion sounded from the direction of the main hall. The formation was broken. Chapter 1986. In a flash, Su Zimo sped towards the main hall. At the same time, cultivators from all over the palace noticed the commotion and swarmed towards the main hall. The crowd in front of the main hall grew denser, and there were more than 10,000 of them. All of them were rubbing their palms excitedly. By the time Su Zimo arrived, he saw Yun Ting standing in midair at the front of the crowd. His eyes were bright and his aura was domineering as he waved his hands continuously, causing his robes to flutter in a transcendent manner. In a short period of time, Yun Ting released at least hundreds of spirit lights from his fingertips that entered the formation in front of the main hall instantly. Suddenly, the light of the formation burst forth in a bedazzling manner and engulfed Yun Ting instantly, causing a series of exclamations. Many cultivators thought that Yun Ting had failed to break the formation and was struck by a backlash. However, everyone soon discovered that Yun Ting's figure was immovable against the light of the formation, and his aura was even sharper than before. "Open up!" Yun Ting hollered softly and pointed forward. The light of the formation was like a tide that was split into two from the middle. Then, it dissipated with a bang. After a short burst of light, all of the light disappeared. The formation at the entrance of the main hall was completely destroyed. However, Yunting's face was only slightly pale and his aura did not weaken at all. He took out a fragrant elixir from his storage bag and swallowed it. Before long, his face turned rosy. With a boom, the main hall's doors collapsed heavily, causing dust to fly everywhere. When they saw that, many cultivators were invigorated and their gazes burned. After a momentary daze, they wanted to barge into the main hall to check it out. Finally, someone else is here. Right then, a sigh echoed through the entire palace, as though it came from the distant past and was filled with the vicissitudes of time. Against that sigh, everyone in the palace seemed to be rooted to the spot and could not move at all. Even Yunting, who was in midair, and Su Zimo, who was in the crowd, were the same. That power was completely beyond everyone's imagination. Who was that person? How long had he been here for him to say something like that? To think that he was still alive after staying in the emperor's tomb. This palace was one of my palaces in the past, and the jade talisman is in the main hall. After a moment of silence, the voice sounded once more. The owner of this voice, could it be the immortal emperor of that year? The immortal emperor didn't die? Many cultivators were horrified when they thought of this. Yunting calmly said, "It's only a remnant intent left behind by this immortal emperor. Break the formation and this intent will be released. It's not a brilliant method. It's rare for any of you to be able to break through the formation I left behind. However, I don't know who will be able to obtain the jade talisman in the main hall." After saying a few words, the voice became somewhat weak. It seemed that after the passage of countless years, this remnant will strength was almost completely depleted. Right, there's one more thing. The immortal emperor's voice sounded again, but this time it was intermittent. This palace hides another treasure. It is much better than the jade talisman. I wonder if there is a fated person. Before he could finish speaking, his voice had already disappeared, and the invisible force that bound the cultivators also disappeared. It really is the remnant will of an immortal emperor. What was his last sentence? I didn't hear it clearly. I think he said that there is another treasure in this palace that is even more precious than the jade talisman. After the remnant will of the immortal emperor disappeared, the crowd instantly exploded, setting off waves of discussion. At this time, Su Zimo's expression did not change, but his heart was beating wildly. The treasure mentioned by the immortal emperor was most likely the ancient bronze lamp with the word soul engraved on it. In all fairness, this ancient bronze lamp was very difficult to notice. It was not in the side hall where the divine weapons and magic treasures were stored. Instead, it was in the side hall where the spiritual pills and miraculous medicines were stored. Moreover, it was just an ordinary lamp on the wall. It was covered in copper rust. Even if someone discovered it, they would not take a second look. If not for the prison-suppressing cauldron's strange movements, even if Su Zimo searched the side hall a few more times, he would not have noticed this ancient bronze lamp. Of course, this was only Su Zimo's guess. The treasure mentioned by the immortal emperor that was more precious than the jade talisman might not necessarily be the ancient bronze lamp. Most of the cultivators' attention was focused on the unknown treasure mentioned by the immortal emperor. But soon, everyone came to their senses. No one knew what the treasure mentioned by the immortal emperor was. However, that jade talisman was in the main hall in front of them. In the current situation, it was more important to get the jade talisman. After a short silence, Yunting was the first to enter the main hall. Immediately after, many cultivators swarmed in and squeezed each other. Some cultivators were even squeezed to the surrounding walls of the main hall, triggering restrictions and dying on the spot. Before the jade talisman could be seen, the smell of blood had already spread. Su Zimo took out his ethereal wings and flew over the heads of the crowd. He entered the main hall and looked around. The main hall was dim and dust floated in the air. However, it was extremely spacious. Even with tens of thousands of cultivators barging in, it did not feel crowded at all. At the front of the main hall, a palm-sized jade talisman floated in midair. It shone with a brilliant light and the surrounding void was colored by it. Everyone saw the jade talisman immediately, but no one dared to act rashly. There were tens of thousands of Stage 9 mystic immortals here. Anyone who dared to step forward would become a target for everyone. Even the arrogant Fang Xian, after the short exchange with Tang Zi and Yun Ting, had restrained his arrogance and was waiting for an opportunity to strike. Su Zimo looked around and spread out his divine sense. He did not find any trace of Tang Zi. He knew that Tang Zi must be among the crowd. However, there were too many cultivators here, and Tang Zi's concealment technique was extremely brilliant. Even Su Zimo could not find her. Su Zimo suddenly felt a strong sense of hostility. He turned and looked over. It was the powerhouses of the four major immortal sects. The bald monk, the iron-towering man, the middle-aged Taoist priest, and the woman in the blue dress. The four of them had not been able to suppress Su Zimo even after joining forces. At this moment, they had already regarded Su Zimo as their greatest opponent. Hee. At this moment, a chuckle came from the front of the crowd. Since no one dares to step forward, I won't hold back. There was a hint of mockery in Yun Ting's laughter. He did not take the crowd seriously at all. Before he left, he purposely turned around and looked deeply at Su Zimo. There was an indescribable look in his eyes. It was like a provocation, but also like a compliment. Su Zimo frowned slightly. He did not know Yun Ting, nor did they have any interactions. He did not know why Yun Ting would suddenly notice him. Yun Ting flew into the air and slowly moved toward the jade talisman. Although he was proud, he did not dare to be careless. Who knew if there were other dangers in the main hall? Yun Ting had only taken a few steps when a strange sound suddenly came from the main hall. Chapter 1987. The sound was as though countless pearls of various sizes were falling onto a jade plate with tinkling sounds. If it was anywhere else, it would have sounded crisp and pleasant. However, in this dilapidated hall of the Emperor's tomb, it sounded rather intimidating. Everyone turned towards the sound and saw pebble-sized beans rolling down the stone steps in front of the hall with clouds of yellow mist surging within. At a single glance, the beans were densely packed and there were at least thousands of them, rolling down the stone steps continuously. What's that? There seems to be spirits circling within those beans. Everyone was wary. In midair, Yun Ting frowned slightly and his gaze flickered in deep thought. As the Duke of the Celestial Nation with the bloodline of the royal family, he was knowledgeable despite his young age. Could it be? Yun Ting murmured softly. Before the beans could roll down in front of the cultivators, they shattered one after another. Then, yellow fog surged out from the beans. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the yellow fog transformed into eerie figures. Some of them wore tattered Taoist robes and had withered cheeks. Their figures were frail and they wielded horsetail whisks. Some of them had a broken arm and wielded a saber in one hand as they staggered over. Some of them had half their cheeks missing, but they were still murderous. All of those figures had a common point, the holes where their eyes should be. They were scarlet and emitted a sinister red glow with a menacing, malevolent aura. Otherworldly soldiers. They're otherworldly soldiers. No wonder we didn't see any otherworldly soldiers blocking the way along the way. To think that we're all trapped in this hall. Why are those otherworldly soldiers coming out of the beans? A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. The appearance of thousands of otherworldly soldiers in the hall was indeed shocking as they blocked everyone's path with rumbling malevolent auras. Fufu. In midair, Yun Ting's expression was calm as usual, as though he had already guessed what was going on. He chuckled. To think that I would be able to witness the mystic art of transforming beans into soldiers in this palace. That statement caused an uproar. Transforming beans into soldiers was a peerless mystic art. Most of the cultivators present did not have high cultivation realms. Most of them were from the lower realms and had never seen such a thing before. At most, they had heard of some legends. Some exalted immortals could summon heavenly soldiers and generals in the blink of an eye to form a mighty army. They were invincible and invincible. Now that all the cultivators had witnessed it with their own eyes, They finally realized that the soldiers summoned by casting beans were not heavenly soldiers or heavenly generals, but otherworldly soldiers and otherworldly generals. Kill, kill, kill. Thousands of undead soldiers roared and charged at the cultivators with bloodshot eyes. Yun Ting was not afraid at all. He chuckled and said, "I presume this is the final test you left behind. These evil things might be able to stop others, but they can't stop me, Yun Ting. I must get the Jade Talisman." With that, Yun Ting charged toward the army of Yin soldiers in front of him. Before the two sides came into contact, Yun Ting put two fingers together and gently waved them forward. A blazing light shot out from Yun Ting's sword fingers. It was extremely sharp and directly tore a huge gap in the army of Yin soldiers. The Yin soldier at the front was cut into two by the sword light. The cut was smooth. This sword chi was sharper than a real sword. Yun Ting moved and charged into the gap alone. "Your Highness, be careful." Many cultivators from the Zixuan Immortal Kingdom shouted and charged forward. However, the undead soldiers were endless. Soon, Yun Ting's figure was drowned and the gap was repaired, isolating Yun Ting from the other cultivators. The cultivators standing at the periphery could only see the surging sword chi in the army of Yin soldiers. Wherever it passed, people were thrown off their horses and broken limbs flew everywhere. Elder Go from the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom and Fang Xian led the cultivators behind them and charged forward. The cultivators from the four major immortal sects also swarmed forward. The rest of the cultivators also moved and charged toward the army of Yin soldiers. Whoever could charge through the army of Yin soldiers first would have the upper hand and the best chance to get the Jade Talisman. Although these Yin soldiers were full of murderous aura, their cultivation was limited. Almost all of them were mystic immortals. There were even some low-level mystic immortals among them. They were not much of a threat to the cultivators. Moreover, these Yin soldiers had an extremely obvious flaw. They did not have primordial spirits and could not use any mystic arts. What they relied on was only their broken and tattered bodies. Su Zimo did not make a move immediately. Instead, he chose to watch from the sidelines. If this casting bean soldiers was really the final test that the immortal emperor left for the cultivators, it was too simple. Su Zimo's ears twitched. Amidst the chaotic fighting and shouting in the main hall, he vaguely heard a faint sound. It was the sound of beans jumping. Su Zimo frowned slightly. He jumped up and went to a high place to look. At the end of the main hall, there were still many sparkling beans jumping and rolling down the stone steps. Then, they cracked and transformed into Yin soldiers and Yin generals. Some of the beans even evolved into huge birds and beasts. There were all kinds of strange creatures. After a round of fighting, the number of Yin soldiers did not decrease. Instead, it was increasing at a terrifying speed. The beans at the end of the main hall were endless. If this continued, the number of Yin soldiers would not be in the tens of thousands. There would be hundreds of thousands or even millions of Yin soldiers. What was more terrifying was that Su Zimo could clearly feel that the Yin soldiers and Yin generals that evolved later were obviously stronger than before. Their bodies were more complete and their auras were terrifying. He could already see Yin soldiers of earthly origin realm emerging from the beans. At this rate, there might even be Yin soldiers of level 6, level 9, or even heaven immortal realm. Even if these Yin soldiers and Yin generals did not have primordial spirits and could not use any mystic arts, their physical strength was enough to kill everyone. It was impossible to kill all of these Yin soldiers and Yin generals. Not to mention snatching the Jade Talisman under the protection of the endless Yin soldiers. There must be a way to break this. Since the immortal Emperor Senior had left this treasure for the Fated One, he would not cut off all the ways out. Su Zimo squinted his eyes and looked over. At the end of the main hall, the Jade Talisman was suspended in midair, emitting a brilliant light. The light sprinkled down and formed a large empty area in the main hall. The beans rolled down the stone steps. However, as if they had a mind of their own, they went around this area. Su Zimo had a plan in mind. I have to get past the Yin soldiers and reach the area covered by the Jade Talisman. I can't get entangled with these Yin soldiers and Yin generals. Su Zimo thought. He looked around the battlefield and began to search for Tang Zi's whereabouts. Although Tang Zi was adept at concealment, she still couldn't hide herself from the onslaught of the army of Yin soldiers. She continued to slaughter her way through the battlefield as she slowly advanced. The Yin soldiers here are endless. The ones at the back are getting stronger. Don't get caught up in the battle. Hurry up and get there. Don't block the way in the air. Su Zimo said through his divine sense. Chapter 1988. Tang Zi knew the Void Thunder Manual, so she might have some connection with the Thunder Emperor. The Thunder Emperor had been suppressed for hundreds of thousands of years, and Tang Zi was young. Of course, she couldn't be the Thunder Emperor's successor, but she might be his disciple. This was the reason why Su Zimo could not watch Tang Zi be trapped to death by the army of otherworldly soldiers. Tang Zi was also very smart. After fighting with the army of ghosts for a while, she felt that something was wrong. Just as she was hesitating whether to advance or retreat, Su Zimo's voice came. Without hesitation, she leaped into the air and sped forward. As an assassin, she had always been a loner. She had no friends since she was a child. Her parents died when she was young, and she didn't trust anyone except her master. But for some reason, she had an indescribable sense of trust with Su Zimo even though she hadn't known him for long. It was like an intuition, a sixth sense, that this person wouldn't harm her. Therefore, after hearing Su Zimo's voice transmission, she didn't hesitate at all. The resistance in the air was indeed much lower. Moreover, looking down from above, Tang Zi also saw the terrifying scene at the end of the hall. The densely packed beings rolled down and transformed into figures with terrifying auras. Their murderous auras were torrential. If they continued to fight with the army of ghosts below, it would be more difficult than ascending to the heavens if they wanted to leave the hall, let alone charge through. Charge to the area covered by the light of the Jade Talisman. Su Zimo's voice sounded again. Tang Zi focused and found that the area was indeed very strange. Whether it was the beings at the beginning or the army of ghosts, they all seemed to be afraid and didn't dare to touch that area. Let's go! In a short while, Su Zimo came to Tang Zi's side and stretched out his hand. Tang Zi knew that Su Zimo's movement technique was powerful and he wanted to bring her over. However, looking at Su Zimo's hand, Tang Zi panicked for no reason. She lowered her head and subconsciously avoided Su Zimo's gaze. Soon, Tang Zi calmed down. She looked up expressionlessly and said, "With my strength, I can go over by myself. Yun Ting and the others have already found something strange. Don't let them beat you to it." At this time, Yun Ting, who was at the front of the army of ghosts, also flew into the air. He saw how terrifying the beings were. At the same time, Fang Xian of the Yen Sun Immortal Kingdom, a few powerhouses of the four major immortal sects, and some prodigies of other sects also flew into the air. These people were all peak experts amongst the mysterious immortals. When they encountered such danger, practically all of them noticed the abnormality at the first possible moment. Profound immortal cheese consumption, not to mention fighting in the air. Of the immortal immortals. Therefore, most cultivators on the ground immortal, and immortal, and Yun. Of the of course of immortal, but immortal was immortal heavens. Immortals of course immortals als of course immortals immortal. Tiki immortal Fang's immortals. Behind them were the powerhouses of the four major immortal sects. Tang Zi stretched out her hand and pushed Su Zimo lightly. She urged, "Hurry up and go. Don't worry about me." She knew that if Su Zimo carried her, his speed would be slowed down and he would fall behind the others. At that time, even if the two of them could rush over, they might not be able to get anything. Su Zimo pondered for a while and nodded. "Be careful." As soon as he finished speaking, a pair of huge golden wings suddenly grew out of Su Zimo's back. Under the golden wings, there was a pair of small wings that were almost transparent. The rock wings and the ethereal wings were activated at the same time. Su Zimo's figure turned into a streak of golden light as he charged forward at lightning speed. His speed was shocking. At the same time, Yun Ting and the others in front were not unhindered. They encountered some trouble. The further they went, the more terrifying and powerful the ghost soldiers and generals were. In the beginning, the army of ghost soldiers could not fly. But now, there were already some ghost soldiers and ferocious flying beasts in the air. They were filled with killing intent. Yun Ting and the others had to stop and fight with these ghost soldiers. Naturally, their speed was slowed down. Su Zimo relied on the rock wings, extreme speed. Even if there were ghost soldiers blocking his way, he could quickly pass through. Most of the time, the ghost soldiers and generals could not react at all. They were usually slow to react. The bald monk of the 4 major immortal sects was swinging his golden fist and fighting with a ghost soldier. Suddenly, beside his ears, there was a sharp and rapid sound of the wind. Then he saw a ray of golden light flash past him from the corner of his eye. "What's that?" The bald monk jumped in fright. "It's Su Zimo from the Great Jin Immortal Nation." The middle-aged Taoist priest recognized it. Back then, Su Zimo relied on this movement technique to cross the lake. It left a deep impression on him. "He surpassed me!" The iron-towering man roared furiously and charged forward, pushing aside the Yin soldiers blocking his way. Then he strode forward and chased after them. On the other side, Old Man Gu and Fang Xian followed behind Yun Ting. Flying in the air consumed a lot of energy, let alone fighting. Old Man Gu was in his twilight years. Although his essence spirit was strong, his spirit consciousness attack was useless against the ghost soldiers. This short period of battle had already made him feel exhausted, and he was gasping for breath. Initially, he could still follow closely behind Yun Ting when he joined forces with Fang Xian. But now, Old Man Ji's blood qi was weak and his combat strength was reduced. Fang Xian had to take care of him most of the time. Old Man Gu had become a burden to Fang Xian. Old Man Gu looked back and saw that the rest of the people from the Yen-Yang Immortal Kingdom were completely surrounded by the ghost soldiers. At this moment, they did not have the chance to retreat even if they wanted to. On the battlefield, miserable screams could be heard that made one's scalp tingle. He saw with his own eyes that a cultivator was torn into 2 by the ghost soldiers. Old Man Ji's face turned paler. "Fang Xian, you can't leave me behind." Old Man Gu seemed to have thought of something and quickly turned around. He threatened in a low voice, "I'm the only one who can bring you out of the Emperor's tomb. If you dare to leave me behind and take the Jade Talisman alone, I'll immediately send a message back. At that time, even if you can return alive, I'll make sure you die without a burial ground." Fang Xian blocked the ghost soldiers and said, "Exalted Immortal, you worry too much. I, Fang Xian, still hope that you can put in a good word for me in front of His Highness. How would I dare to be disloyal?" "It's good that you know." Old Man Gu snorted. At this moment, Fang Xian's expression changed as he noticed Su Zimo who had caught up from behind. "Exalted Immortal, we have to stop this person. We can't let him overtake us." Fang Xian let out a low growl and charged forward immediately. Chapter 1989. There was nothing wrong with stopping Su Zimo. However, Elder Gu felt that something was amiss. On the chaotic battlefield, the situation was dangerous and tense, so he did not have the energy to think about it. Moreover, Fang Xian had already rushed forward, so Elder Gu could only follow. In the air, Su Zimo relied on the Depeng Wing's extreme speed divine power and continued to pass through the obstruction of many Yin soldiers. His speed did not decrease at all as he quickly approached Yun Ting, who was at the front. All of a sudden, a figure charged out from the side and punched out, emitting an extremely violent and ferocious aura. The surrounding air became scorching hot from the friction of the punch. There was no extra movement in the punch. It was a simple straight punch, but it blocked all of Su Zimo's escape routes. Su Zimo's expression did not change. He ignored the punch and his body showed no signs of slowing down at all. Instead, he charged forward fiercely. Boom! The two collided, and there was a loud explosion that shook the heavens and earth. Su Zimo's figure appeared and stopped in midair. An expert, and a top expert. One had to know that Qinglian's true body had now grown to the peak of the 9th grade. Even if she did not use her qi, she could fight against a Khanate mystic grade Dharma treasure head-on. After he released his extreme speed divine power, the ethereal wings, to still be able to stop him. Apart from the amazing physical strength, one also had to have extremely good eyesight. Even the geniuses of the 4 major immortal sects who had fought with him before did not have such means. Su Zimo looked sideways and saw a man in black standing in midair not far away. It was the person who had fought with Tang Zi before. Fang Xian's body shook violently and he took half a step back. His face was dark, and he had one hand behind his back. As a monster from the lower world, he cultivated a mysterious cultivation method, the divine elephant breathing technique. He was invincible. Every time he attacked, he had the power of a divine elephant that could destroy the heavens and earth and collapse the stars. If this cultivation method was cultivated to the extreme, one could even obtain the power of thousands of divine elephants. He would be invincible on land and suppress all living beings. The fact that he was able to transcend the 49 heavenly tribulations and ascend with an indestructible body showed how powerful his body was. Not to mention in the lower realm, even after ascending to the upper realm, no cultivator of the same level was a match for him in close combat. However, just now he and Su Zimo had not used their blood qi. It was just a pure physical fight, yet he was actually at a disadvantage. His hands behind his back were trembling slightly as he felt waves of intense pain. He secretly channeled his qi and blood to dispel the pain. The internal injuries on his palms slowly healed. A thought flashed through Fang Xian's mind. He realized that even if he used his blood qi, he might not be able to defeat Su Zimo. Even if he could gain the upper hand by activating his bloodline phenomenon, he wouldn't be able to suppress Su Zimo within a short time. Not to mention, the bloodline phenomenon was one of his greatest trump cards, and he would absolutely not utilize it unless he had no other choice. He had prepared this photo as a trump card for Yun Ting. With that thought in mind, Fang Xian moved and came to Su Zimo's side. This man's physique is extremely strong. I'll take him on head-on. Exalted Immortal, attack from behind. On the other side, Old Man Ge had just arrived when he heard Fang Xian's voice transmission. Before he could think further, Fang Xian had already made his move. Boom! Fang Xian channeled his blood qi and the sound of a tsunami echoed from his body. Tsunami blood. Filled with blood qi, Fang Xian's body expanded rapidly and grew continuously. In the blink of an eye, he grew into a 30 feet tall giant. Bang! 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 Fang Xian's enormous body swayed. Every step he took in midair would emit a loud bang. His entire body was suffused with a barbaric and ferocious aura. He was like a divine elephant that had come from the wilderness and was charging over. The collision and stomping power of a divine elephant was the most frightening. On land, no living being could stop it. Su Zimo looked at Fang Xian, who was charging over with a fearless expression and a burning gaze. His feet fiercely stomped on the ground, and his knees bent forward. His entire body was extremely stretched, like a galloping horse. That was a killing move from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Worried that Qinglian's bloodline would be exposed, Su Zimo did not use his blood qi. Even so, the aura of that move was not weak at all. Exalted Immortal, this is the time to attack. Fang Xian sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness and growled. Old Man Ge did not think much and advanced instinctively. Conjuring a dermic seal with both hands, he smashed it towards Su Zimo's back. When he saw that Fang Xian and Su Zimo were about to collide, a crafty look flashed through Fang Xian's eyes. Suddenly he dispersed his blood qi and stopped in his tracks. Like a deflated balloon, Fang Xian's body shriveled rapidly and returned to normal. Fang Xian did not choose to fight Su Zimo head-on. Instead, he suddenly stopped in his tracks and retreated. Su Zimo was slightly stunned. Right then, Old Man Ge's attack descended. Su Zimo harumphed coldly. Without even thinking or turning back, his entire arm turned limp like the trunk of an elephant. With a thud, he swung it behind him. The change was extremely sudden and without any warning. Initially, Fang Xian and Old Man Gu joined forces to stop Su Zimo. However, with Fang Xian's sudden retreat, Old Man Gu was left to face Su Zimo alone. Old Man Gu wanted to dodge and retreat, but it was already too late. His eyes widened as he watched Fang Xian leave. Initially, his eyes were filled with shock, suspicion, and confusion. Eventually, they were filled with rage. Old Man Gu only managed to say a single word before the dermic seal he conjured with both hands was shattered by Su Zimo's arm. Immediately after, the arm whipped Old Man Gu on the head, shattering his skull and destroying his essence spirit. He died on the spot. Although Old Man Ji's essence spirit was also at Earth Essence Realm, he did not have the chance to release essence spirit's secret skills. Although there were many cultivators present, less than 5 of them could withstand Su Zimo's attack. Su Zimo frowned and quickly understood that he had been used as a weapon. However, this did not affect him much. He was just an exalted immortal from the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom. So what if he killed him? However, the treacherous and cunning that Fang Xian revealed made him raise a trace of vigilance. This person was a little tricky. Thank you. Fang Xian came to Old Man Ji's side and took his storage bag. After keeping it, he laughed sinisterly at Su Zimo and continued to charge forward. As a demon from the lower world who had transcended the 49 heavenly tribulations and ascended, he was proud and would not submit to others easily. Moreover, Old Man Gu was just a servant of the Duke. In this old man's bones, there was a kind of condescending contempt and arrogance, never placing Fang Xian in his eyes. Although Fang Xian was respectful on the surface, he was already dissatisfied and resentful. However, no matter how bold he would not dare to kill an exalted immortal in front of everyone like Su Zimo did. That was the reason for what happened earlier on. To him, this old man was already a burden and was useless. After abandoning him, Fang Xian chased after Yun Ting with a relaxed expression. Chapter 1990. Judging from Fang Xian's earlier scheme, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was a cunning old fox. Not only had he schemed against Elder Gu, but he had also made Su Zimo his weapon. At the same time that he got rid of a huge problem, he also removed himself from the matter completely and removed himself from it. Even if he returned to the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom, he would not be punished. After a slight delay, Su Zimo flapped his wings and continued to fly in the direction of the Jade Talisman. At this time, more and more beings cracked and transformed into powerful living beings. Towards the end, almost all of them were Stage 9 mystic immortals, and some were even Earth deity level Een soldiers. A humongous sea beast floated over and opened its mouth wide, as if it was going to swallow the entire hall into its stomach. Su Zimo did not dodge. Instead, he turned into a ray of golden light and rushed over. Gulp. The sea beast gulped down Su Zimo in huge mouthfuls. Su Zimo did not stop. Instead, he rushed even more ferociously. He was going to run through the huge body of the sea beast. At this time, Yun Ting was far ahead of the rest. Su Zimo did not have much time to tangle with the sea beast. A ray of golden light shot through the sea beast's head and pierced through its chest and internal organs. Towards the back, Su Zimo's strength was depleted as well. Fortunately, they were in the sea beast's body and there was a huge skeleton to hide it. Su Zimo did not have to worry about being discovered and exposing the secret of Qinglian's true body. Boom! Channeling his blood qi, Su Zimo burst forth with an extremely terrifying power once more as he tore through the body of the sea beast at lightning speed. Su Zimo overtook Fang Xian again and caught up with Yun Ting. Fang Xian cursed in his heart. However, there was nothing he could do when he saw this. With the help of the bean soldiers, the true geniuses among the cultivators had stood out. At this time, the geniuses were divided into several groups. The one at the front was Duke Yun Ting of the Zixian Celestial Kingdom. His fleshly body was extremely strong. Every punch and kick, every move and style carried an extremely sharp edge. Wherever he pointed, almost no Yin soldiers could stand in his way. Of course, as the Yin soldiers became stronger, his speed gradually slowed down. The one at the second place was Su Zimo. Su Zimo's method was more violent and ferocious. He did not reduce his speed at all. He was getting closer and closer to Yun Ting. The ones at the third place was Fang Xian and Tang Zi. The two of them had different methods, each displaying their own abilities. Fang Xian's strength was more ferocious, while Tang Zi's movements were unpredictable. Fang Xian's seat was slightly closer to the front, while Tang Zi was slightly behind. The ones at the fourth place were the geniuses of the four immortal celestial sects. Although the four of them were behind Su Zimo, Yun Ting and the rest, they were not far behind and were practically following Tang Zi closely. At the back were the elites among the cultivators. There were not many of them. There were only a few dozen of them. They were scattered and fighting on their own. Although these people were also in the air, they would be lucky if they could escape alive, let alone break through the Yin soldiers' blockade. Just flying in the air consumed a lot of primordial chi, let alone fighting the Yin soldiers in the air. If one was not a top genius, it would be impossible to break through. Many cultivators had entered the imperial tomb, but there were only a few who stood out. Some of the more observant cultivators saw that the situation was not good and began to retreat. They were ready to escape the hall. However, there were too many Yin soldiers. Even if they wanted to escape, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Yun Ting was getting closer and closer to the Jade Talisman. He was only 200 feet away. As long as he crossed this distance, he would be able to reach the Jade Talisman's brilliance. This distance was only a few breaths' time for him. The Jade Talisman was at his fingertips. Yun Ting's lips curled into a smile. Without stopping, he turned around and glanced at Su Zimo behind him. He raised a finger with a smug expression and waved it in front of him. Su Zimo was smart and understood the meaning of that gesture instantly. Yun Ting was saying that he was number one and that Su Zimo was no match for him. Su Zimo's expression was calm as he maintained his speed. However, there was a look of mockery in his eyes. At the same time, Yun Ting suddenly felt a sharp sound, as though a sharp weapon was piercing towards him. Yun Ting was alarmed. Before the attack had even landed, he felt a sharp pain in his back. This meant that the attacker's strength was far beyond his. Without thinking, Yun Ting's body swayed and turned blurry. His figure faded, as though he had entered a nameless void and was no longer in this world. Great Void Sword. Even in the entire upper world, this movement secret skill was one of the top movement techniques and had already touched upon the Tao and Dharma of space. If it was not extremely dangerous, Yun Ting would not have released Great Void Sword. A white bone spear missed its target. Yun Ting turned around and frowned when he saw the attacker. If the ones he had met before could be called Yin soldiers, then the one in front of him could definitely be called a Yin general. This person did not have a head and was riding on a red-crowned crane. He held a bone spear in his hand and his body was surrounded by a thick murderous aura. This Yin general's cultivation level had reached Earth Origin Stage 7. He could be considered as a high-level Earth immortal. Although this Yin general did not have a primordial spirit and could not use any secret skills, the strength he had just displayed was enough to kill Yun Ting. Even with Yun Ting's pride, he had to focus and not be careless. This was the last obstacle. As long as he could get past this Yin general, he would be able to reach the area covered by the Jade Talisman's brilliance. With this delay, Su Zimo had caught up with him. Yun Ting glanced at Su Zimo from the corner of his eye and saw two high-level Earth immortal Yin soldiers in front of him. They formed a triangle formation and blocked his path. Yun Ting heaved a sigh of relief. With such a terrifying Yin general blocking him, Su Zimo would not be able to get past it in a short period of time. But soon, Yun Ting realized that something was wrong. Although there were two Yin soldiers blocking his path, Su Zimo's speed did not slow down at all. He was extremely fast. Oh no, it's that kind of movement skill. Although Yun Ting did not see it with his own eyes, he had heard some cultivators talking about it. According to those cultivators, Su Zimo had relied on a strange movement skill that was close to teleportation to cross the lake and pluck the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng. Just as expected. Just as Su Zimo was about to collide with the 2 Yin soldiers' swords, his body suddenly flickered. When he reappeared, Su Zimo had already left the 2 Yin soldiers behind him. 9 true dragon flashes. The path ahead was smooth and there were no longer any obstacles. Su Zimo turned around and looked at Yun Ting with a faint smile. He extended a finger and waved it in front of Yun Ting. You! Yun Ting was enraged. Since he started cultivating, he had never been provoked and humiliated in such a way. Ha! Su Zimo laughed and turned to leave. Chapter 1991. Su Zimo flapped his wings and turned into a beam of golden light. In the blink of an eye, he was within the range of the Jade Talisman's brilliance. The otherworldly soldiers seemed to have sensed something and were extremely wary of the Jade Talisman's brilliance. They stopped and dispersed. The Jade Talisman was right in front of him. Su Zimo still didn't know what the Jade Talisman's secret was. However, if it could make the 3 great celestial kingdoms, the 4 great celestial sects and countless other sects and factions of all sizes in the Divine Cloud continent, this Jade Talisman was definitely not simple. Su Zimo didn't hesitate anymore. He moved and quickly rose into the air, grabbing the Jade Talisman high up in the sky. As long as he could get the Jade Talisman, he would have the upper hand. Whether he fought or retreated, he would have the upper hand. Moreover, with the Jade Talisman in hand, he wouldn't have to fear the otherworldly soldiers around him. Su Zimo was extremely fast. Just as he was about to grab the Jade Talisman, an extremely cold and murderous aura suddenly came from behind him. A beam of sword light pierced through the air. It was so fast that it reached Su Zimo's outstretched arm first. This murderous aura was so terrifying that Su Zimo even felt like he had fallen into an ice cellar in an instant. His hands and feet were cold. If he wasn't Qinglian's real body and had strong blood qi, this murderous aura would be enough to freeze his blood vessels. This murderous aura was so strong that even the heavenly kill and earthly kill sword techniques he cultivated couldn't compare to it. Could it be? A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. Now that he was facing a strong enemy and the situation was critical, he didn't dare to be distracted and didn't think too much. This beam of sword qi was really amazing. It was so sharp that it seemed to be able to cut through everything in the world, pierce through the void, and destroy everything. Even if Qinglian's real body could fight against a mystic-grade Dharma treasure, it would definitely not be able to block this sword. Su Zimo could almost foresee that if he continued to reach out to grab the Jade Talisman, his entire hand would be cut off by this beam of sword qi before he could touch the Jade Talisman. It's Yun Ting. Su Zimo didn't have to look back to guess who it was. Yun Ting was the only one who could unleash such terrifying sword energy. Su Zimo unleashed True Dragon's 9 flashes and got past the Yin soldiers first. Yun Ting wasn't weak either. Disregarding the depletion of his origin energy, he executed the Great Void Sword consecutively to break free from the Yin general's entanglement. Following which, he charged forward. Yun Ting was determined to obtain the Jade Talisman. He would not allow anyone else to lay a finger on it. Therefore, when he intercepted Su Zimo this time, he did not hold back at all and directly unleashed his murderous sword qi. Before this, Yun Ting had also released sword qi that was sharp enough to cut through gold and jade, but that was only the most ordinary sword qi that he had cultivated. The murderous sword qi was much more terrifying than these. Su Zimo's expression was calm, and his eyes were unperturbed. He had experienced this kind of situation too many times, so it was nothing to him. He withdrew his palm, and his figure flickered, suddenly disappearing from the spot. After reaching the 9th level of the Mystic Origin stage, Su Zimo was able to release the True Dragon Flash 3 times in a short period of time. Right now, he was using the second flash. By the time Su Zimo appeared once more, he was already behind Yun Ting. Without hesitation, Su Zimo raised his palm and slapped down towards Yun Ting's head. This time round, Su Zimo did not hold back and released the Great Chaos Essence palm right away. His fair, tender palm expanded instantly, as though it had transformed into a gigantic millstone, crushing down towards Yun Ting with a shocking aura. His strength was so great that it even caused the air to explode with a deafening sound. Not only did he avoid Yun Ting's sword chi, he even turned the situation around and attacked. The change was extremely sudden. Su Zimo appeared behind Yun Ting without any warning, and the latter had no time to react at all. He did not even have time to turn around, let alone escape. Good timing. Not only was Yun Ting not flustered at all, he hollered as his blood chi surged and his hair stood on end. All of a sudden, Yun Ting's black hair stood on end. Every strand of his hair shot up to the sky like countless long swords, exuding an extremely sharp aura. Amazing! When he saw that, Su Zimo praised from the depths of his heart. Although Yun Ting was young, his cultivation in the sword Dao was way too deep. He had already fused the sword Dao into every single part of his body and even cultivated it to the ends of his hair. Even his hair was a killing weapon that was extremely sharp, and even divine weapons and dermic treasures could not compare to it. Yun Ting's hair stood on end, and it was no different from countless flying swords. Boom! The great chaos essence palm descended and collided with Yun Ting's hair with a deafening bang. Although the hair seemed soft, it burst forth with a terrifying sharpness that wanted to pierce the gigantic millstone above his head. Crick, crick, crick. The millstone crushed and spun, rubbing against Yun Ting's hair repeatedly with an ear-piercing sound. Clang, clang. A portion of Yun Ting's black hair snapped, and the sound of a bowstring snapping could be heard. At the same time, Su Zimo felt a sharp pain in his palm. His hair was like a sword and destroyed the great chaos essence palm. Even Su Zimo was stunned by Yun Ting's move. Yun Ting's hair snapped and the great chaos essence palm dissipated at the same time. Su Zimo did not linger, and his figure flashed once more. Third flash. This time round, Su Zimo was already beside the Jade Talisman when he appeared once more. The Jade Talisman was close. Given Yun Ting's methods, it would be difficult to determine a victor within a short period of time. Yun Ting was truly the most troublesome and strongest opponent he had encountered since ascending to the upper world. If he continued to linger, it would be easy for other unforeseen events to occur when Fang Xian and the others caught up. At that thought, Su Zimo made a prompt decision and retreated, prepared to get his hands on the Jade Talisman first. With me around, don't even think about getting your hands on the Jade Talisman. The moment Su Zimo reached out, Yun Ting's voice sounded in his ears. Su Zimo ignored Yun Ting's threat. No matter how fast the latter's movement technique was, it could not compare to the true dragon's 9 flashes. Su Zimo reached out and grabbed, but his expression changed slightly. He missed. The Jade Talisman was right in front of him, but he grabbed nothing. The Jade Talisman was still there motionlessly, but Su Zimo did not manage to grab it. It was as though there was a layer of space between his palm and the Jade Talisman. Space overlay? Su Zimo frowned. Although space overlay was only one of the lesser divine powers, it was extremely mysterious and difficult to comprehend. Space and time divine powers were extremely difficult to comprehend. Once comprehended and released, the power would be immense and the effects would be shocking. For example, the time divine power, Time Blade, had always been one of Su Zimo's strongest killing moves. Although the space overlay released by Yun Ting earlier on did not have much lethality, it created a layer of space between Su Zimo's Jade Talisman, causing Su Zimo's attack to miss. With that single move, Yun Ting had already arrived opposite Su Zimo. The Jade Talisman was right in front of the two of them. However, if Su Zimo wanted to snatch the Jade Talisman, he would have to get past Yun Ting. It was the same for Yun Ting. Book Abode Reading Website. Chapter 1992. This man is strong. Su Zimo looked at Yun Ting, who was not far away, and murmured internally. After ascending to the upper realm, apart from Tang Zi, Yun Ting was the only other person who could make him release the 9 True Dragon Flash twice in a row to no avail. Furthermore, Su Zimo had a feeling that even if he could release the 3rd flash, he would not be able to suppress this person. This was an extremely strong opponent who could even threaten him. Ever since he started cultivating, there were not many cultivators who could make him feel threatened. In Tianhuang mainland, there were only a few people who could. More importantly, there was a special connection between him and Commandery Prince Yunting. Before this, when Yunting released that terrifying sword Qi, a guess flashed through his mind. However, the situation was critical and he could not divert his attention to think about it. Now that Su Zimo looked at Yunting, who was emitting a sharp aura, he was even more certain of his guess. Seems like you've guessed it. Yunting chuckled. Su Zimo asked, the Human Slayer sword art? The Human Slayer sword art was most likely the Human Slayer sword art with such a terrifying killing intent that surpassed even the Heavenly Slayer and Earthly Slayer. That's right. Yunting did not hide anything and said frankly, I cultivate the Human Slayer sword art while you cultivate the Heaven Slayer sword art. There's a rumor that the Heavenly Slayer and Earthly Slayer were left in the lower realm. To think that I would bump into someone who cultivates the Heaven Slayer sword art ascending to the upper realm. This is the will of the heavens. This is an opportunity. Yunting was in high spirits and his tone was filled with immense confidence. The three great sword arts have been separated for many years. Even the heavens want to reunite the three great sword arts. The Heavenly Slayer has already appeared. If nothing goes wrong, the Earthly Slayer will appear soon as well. Once I obtain your Heaven Slayer sword art, I'll search for the Earthly Slayer sword art. At that time, the three great sword arts will be reunited and I, Yunting, will become the #1 sword of Divine Cloud Mainland, 9 Clouds Immortal Realm, and even the entire Heaven World. In the future, I'll head to the Sword World and challenge all the experts of the Sword Dao there. I, Yunting, will use the sword in my hand to defeat all the experts of the world and reign supreme for eternity. With every word Yunting spoke, the sharpness on his body became sharper, and his aura grew stronger by a notch. Yunting was accumulating power. Every word he said seemed like he was talking to himself, but in fact he was accumulating power for himself and pressuring Su Zimo. Su Zimo's expression was grave. It had been a long time since he had encountered such a terrifying and powerful opponent. The last person who made him feel this kind of pressure was Monk Daming. The fusion of the three great sword techniques is indeed the will of the heavens. Su Zimo suddenly smiled and said slowly, but this may not be your opportunity. Yunting wanted to fuse the three sword arts, and Su Zimo had the same idea. Yunting stared at Su Zimo and nodded with a smile. You're right. We have the same idea. Therefore, even if we don't fight for the Jade Talisman, there will be a battle between us. Yunting's gaze was as sharp as a sword, and the light radiating from his eyes could even cause one to feel waves of piercing pain. If not for the fact that Su Zimo possessed the 2 God stones, illumination and nether glow, and cultivated 2 types of visual techniques, he would not have been able to meet Yunting's gaze directly. However, Su Zimo knew very well that if he were to avert his gaze, given Yunting's perception, the latter would definitely attack with the most ferocious attack possible. That was the terror of Yunting. On the other side, Yunting's evaluation of Su Zimo was rising continuously as well. If it was anyone else, they would not have been able to withstand his gaze. To think that this person who ascended from the lower world would be able to match his gaze without being disadvantaged. On the surface, the two of them were merely facing each other. However, in reality, they had already begun to test each other. Any slight change, or even the slightest abnormality in one's breathing or pulse, would lead to an earth-shattering battle. Both parties were scrutinizing each other, carefully searching for openings. Within the otherworldly army, Fang Xian and the others were still advancing with all their might. By the time Fang Xian and the others arrived, something else would definitely happen. There was not much time left for the two of them. Very good. Yunting was the first to speak and said in a deep voice, "Indeed, you're a decent opponent. You're worthy of me going all out." The moment he said that, Yunting's pupils constricted to the size of needles. Thereafter, 2 extremely sharp sword lights burst forth with a chilling aura. The 2 sword lights streaked through the voids and even let out a sword hum. If one had not witnessed it personally, it would be hard to imagine that such a terrifying sword light could be released from one's eyes. Visual technique, Ice Soul Sword Eye. The two sword lights burst forth and the surrounding voids seemed to freeze as the temperature plummeted. Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit without holding back and released the two great visual techniques, illumination and nether fluorescence. However, something unexpected happened in between. Illumination Eye was released normally and released a blinding beam of light that collided fiercely against the two sword lights. However, there was no reaction from the nether fluorescence eye. When Su Zimo's spirit consciousness entered his left eye, it was as though it met with some sort of obstruction and did not cause any ripples. Previously on the lone island, the nether fluorescence stone absorbed a tremendous amount of power of darkness. Given the current power of Su Zimo's essence spirit, it was difficult for him to channel it. Of course, that power had not disappeared and was hidden within the nether fluorescence stone the entire time. If it was released one day, it would definitely cause an extremely terrifying scene. Boom! The two sword lights collided with a blazing beam of light and the ice melted before regenerating quickly. If illumination and nether fluorescence were released at the same time, it would definitely be superior to the Ice Soul Sword Eye. However, at that moment, Su Zimo was disadvantaged in this visual technique clash with only Illumination Eye. Layers of frost formed rapidly on his body with a bone-chilling coldness. Boom! Yun Ting attacked brazenly and crossed the voids, arriving instantly with a punch. The moment Su Zimo's body was covered in frost and his movements were affected, Yun Ting attacked. In a fight between top monster incarnates as such, they would not let go of any openings or missed any opportunity. Just now, Yun Ting's accumulated strength was gathered on that punch with a torrential aura that was unstoppable. In fact, Su Zimo even felt a sense of suffocation. Before the punch arrived, his cheeks were already hurting from the wind of the punch. It was way too strong. Against that punch, Su Zimo could not avoid it. He punched in reverse and seemed to condense a gigantic seal that met Yun Ting's punch. Bang! The two fists collided and the friction between flesh and bones let out a shuddering sound. The strength of both of them was released completely in that single punch without holding back. The two people's fleshy body power was actually evenly matched. However, before long, Su Zimo felt a sharp pain in his fist. Yun Ting's sword Dao had already been cultivated to every part of his body. His brows, hair and even the hairs on his body were sharp killing weapons. Apart from the burst of his physical strength, Yun Ting's punch was also filled with sharpness. Although the sharpness of his sword Dao could not break through the defense of Qinglian's true body, it hurt Su Zimo. Chapter 1993. Both of them clashed head-on with their fists, and it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. Su Zimo's expression did not change. Taking advantage of the moment when the two of them separated from each other, he changed his move and turned his fist into a palm. The great chaotic essence palm was formed and crushed toward Yun Ting. Just as Su Zimo changed his move, Yun Ting also changed his move. He clenched his fingers together and formed a sword finger, turning his fist into a sword. The two of them had an extraordinary tacit understanding and displayed unparalleled combat talent. They were unwilling to let go of any opportunity. The great chaotic essence palm was heavy and steady. The sword finger was sharp and could cut through gold and jade. The palm and sword collided, and another loud sound was heard. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks appeared on the huge millstone formed by the great chaotic essence palm. The sharpness of Yun Ting's sword finger also broke inch by inch. Their figures swayed slightly, and then they quickly retreated to distance themselves from each other and neutralize the power that surged into their bodies. The battle between the two of them seemed short, but they almost erupted with the power of a Stage 9 mystic immortal. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Ever since Qinglian's true body had grown to Stage 9, no one could resist the physical strength of Qinglian's true body even if she did not use her blood qi. Whether it was the prodigies of the four major immortal sects or Feng Xian, they were all weaker. Yun Ting was the only one who could fight Qinglian's true body head-on and not be at a disadvantage. Ever since Su Zimo ascended to the upper realm, Qinglian's true body had grown rapidly. She had cultivated a forbidden cultivation technique like the Prajna Nirvana Sutra and absorbed supreme treasures like the Su'a Luo leaf and the 7 Dawn ginseng. She had already cultivated to the peak of stage 9. He was only one step away from advancing to the next level and stepping into rank 10. Even so, Qinglian's true body still could not gain the upper hand. In terms of strength, Yun Ting's physical body was not weaker than his. In terms of battle, Yun Ting also displayed extremely terrifying talent and skills. Yun Ting was only 200 years old. He was too young. His potential was limitless. Su Zimo had been cultivating for more than 2,000 years. While Su Zimo was musing to himself, Yun Ting was even more shocked on the other side. Yun Ting originally thought that the methods that Su Zimo was proficient in should be the heaven-slaying sword art and movement technique. However, he never expected that there would actually be someone in the upper realm who could resist the power of his physical body. From the moment he was born, he was accompanied by strange phenomena. In order to help him temper his muscles and bones, his father had searched for countless natural treasures, elixirs, and miraculous medicines. Just the top body refinement cultivation methods alone, he had cultivated as many as 10. When he was 100 years old, he had fused these 10 body refinement techniques with the human-slaying sword art. Only then was he truly reborn, and his body and bloodline were completed. Even the average Earth immortal could not withstand his sword finger. Yun Ting had never imagined that someone at the same level as him would be able to compete with him. Good, good, good. Yun Ting nodded repeatedly, his face filled with joy. The sword intent in his eyes grew stronger and stronger. Su Zimo's aura rose continuously as well. His battle intent rumbled and his gaze burned like a torch. Such an opponent was rare and neither of them would back down. Yun Ting's appearance triggered the pride in Su Zimo's heart as well. Fight! Almost at the same time, the two of them hollered and clashed once more in a flash. Bang, 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 clang, clang. Su Zimo's fists, palms, claws, feet, shoulders, elbows and knees, every single part of his body could release extremely terrifying killing moves with unparalleled ferocity. Each time he attacked, it was accompanied by a tragic killing intent. Those techniques were created by Su Zimo by fusing the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness and the Azure Dragon's combat techniques. They were battle techniques that belonged to him and were suitable for Qinglian's true body. They were shockingly powerful. However, Yun Ting was not weak either. Every single move of his fingers, hair, sleeves and fists could release a sharp glint. No matter how ferocious Su Zimo's attacks were, Yun Ting could neutralize them. The two of them fought in melee combat with speed. They were so entangled that their figures could not be distinguished and the only thing that could be heard were the sounds of collisions. Melee combat was the most dangerous. However, the two of them had already exchanged hundreds of moves in the span of dozens of breaths. Neither of them could gain the upper hand and they were in a stalemate. Bang! The two of them clashed head-on once more before retreating and panting slowly. At that moment, the frightening strength of their stamina was revealed. Neither of them were visibly exhausted after the fight. They were merely breathing heavily and their faces were slightly flushed. You should be proud that you were able to block so many of my moves. Yun Ting raised his head slightly. Use the heaven-slaying sword art. Let me see what level you've cultivated that sword art to. All right, as you wish. Su Zimo sneered. I'm also interested to see how strong the legendary mortal-slaying sword art is for it to be ranked as the top of the 3 great sword arts. The moment he said that, Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit and conjured a sword art with his left hand. Instantly, his aura changed and exuded a cold, killing intent. A sky filled with stars appeared above the main hall. However, they lost their trajectories and were in a mess. Yun Ting gazed at the stars above and murmured softly, when a human's killing intent is released, the stars will shift. Not bad, not bad. As he said that, Yun Ting raised his palm slowly as well. A ball of sword light condensed in his palm. If his palm was a part of the world, then this ball of sword light would turn the world upside down. Yun Ting's killing intent intensified. That's the mortal-slaying sword art? Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly. Indeed, he could sense a shuddering aura from that ball of sword light, as though it could destroy the world. Yun Ting nodded slightly. That's indeed the mortal-slaying sword art. However, this is not the peak of its power. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Even though it was not the strongest manifestation of the mortal-slaying sword art, he could already sense a tremendous threat and palpitate. Yun Ting paused for a moment before changing the topic. He chuckled and said confidently, "However, it's enough to deal with your mortal-slaying sword art." "Is that so?" Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly as he released the heaven-slaying sword art with all his might. Su Zimo waved his sword finger and instantly, 108,000 sword chi gushed out from his fingertip. They were dense and resplendent, blanketing the skies. His other hand was empty the entire time and he was prepared. If the heaven-slaying sword art was no match, he would conjure his sword finger and release the earth-slaying sword art. Yun Ting flipped his palm and sent out the sword light in his palm as well. Compared to Su Zimo's 108,000 heaven-slaying sword chi, that ball of sword light seemed much weaker. However, it was filled with a terrifying aura. Once the sword light exploded, it would definitely be earth-shattering. Just as the two sword arts were about to collide, something happened. On the other side, a black figure charged toward Su Zimo at lightning speed with a murderous aura. That figure came from Su Zimo's side and closed in at an extremely fast speed. Aiming for Su Zimo's temple, the figure punched viciously with an incomparably ferocious force that tore through the air with a buzzing sound. The timing of that person's attack was perfect. It was the moment when Su Zimo could not spare any attention or energy to deal with other unforeseen events. "Duke Yun Ting, I'm here to lend you a hand and kill that lad." The intruder laughed. His smile that was hidden in the darkness was somewhat menacing. Fang Xian of the Flaming Sun, Immortal Kingdom. Chapter 1994. As Su Zimo and Yun Ting fought, both of them did not dare to be distracted and went all out. Neither of them noticed that Fang Xian had already charged out of the encirclement of the otherworldly army. Fang Xian was powerful and could definitely be considered as a top monster among the mystic immortals. In fact, he could even fight against Su Zimo and Yun Ting. Even in a head-on fight, he might not lose to the both of them. However, Fang Xian was scheming and had great plans. In this chaotic situation, he would definitely not choose to fight against Su Zimo and Yun Ting alone. The best way was to join forces with Yun Ting. Yun Ting had a noble status. Apart from his powerful strength, he was a duke. No one knew what other hidden tricks he had up his sleeves. If he joined forces with Yun Ting and got rid of Su Zimo, he would not have to fear the rest. Even if he could not obtain the Jade Talisman in the end, if he could gain Yun Ting's favor and become friends with him, the benefits would be unimaginable. As someone who ascended from the lower world, he would not let go of any chance to change his fate. In fact, he would do anything. Therefore, Fang Xian's attack this time round was thunderous and did not give Su Zimo any chance to escape. Although Su Zimo's spirit perception warned him in advance, the pressure and threat from Yun Ting's attack was too great. The current situation was equivalent to him fighting against two people alone. Furthermore, both of them were top experts of the mystic essence realm. The pressure Su Zimo faced increased exponentially. It had been a long time since he was forced into such a dangerous situation by cultivators of the same cultivation realm. If Su Zimo released all his trump cards, he would naturally be able to resolve this wave of attacks from the two of them. However, he would definitely not be able to hide his true form of Qinglian. As long as he used his blood qi, given Yun Ting's experience, he would definitely be able to recognize it. However, the situation was critical now. If he did not use his blood qi or even his bloodline phenomenon, he would definitely be severely injured. Su Zimo had no way out. Instantly, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Thereafter, a look of determination flashed through his eyes as he prepared to attack with all his might. At this moment, there was a slight change in the situation. Fang Xian's sudden appearance not only shocked Su Zimo, but even Yun Ting was slightly taken aback. Shortly after, Yun Ting's expression turned furious, and a wisp of killing intent flashed in his eyes. He was too proud and disdained to join hands with others. It was rare to meet an opponent like Su Zimo. If he wanted to win, he would win fair and square. Furthermore, Fang Xian's action was not to team up with him, but a sneak attack. Yun Ting even felt like he was being used. With his conceit, he would never allow Su Zimo to die in front of him like this. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, Yun Ting glanced at Su Zimo and sent out a message with his consciousness. The mortal-slaying sword beam that was about to collide with the heaven-slaying sword chi suddenly dissipated, turning into essence chi that dissipated in the hall. Yun Ting withdrew his attack at the last moment. When two people were fighting, if one of them suddenly retreated while the other didn't, or couldn't stop in time, this action was tantamount to suicide. This choice was too risky. Yun Ting was equivalent to exposing himself to 108,000 streaks of heaven-slaying sword chi. Just as Yun Ting dispersed that ball of mortal-slaying sword light, his other hand conjured a sword art. His killing intent was cold as he slashed towards Fang Xian across space. Mortal-slaying sword chi erupted, its edge pointing straight for Fang Xian. You! When Fang Xian detected this scene, he turned pale with fright and was enraged in his heart, secretly cursing a lunatic. He racked his brains and deduced countless possible changes. But he never thought that Yun Ting would actually make such a choice. On the other side, Yun Ting's change in move also exceeded Su Zimo's expectations. Originally, he was besieged by two top powerhouses and fell into immense danger, the situation critical. But now, because of Yun Ting's choice, the situation instantly reversed. On the contrary, it was possible that he would become the biggest winner. As long as he did not pull back, 108,000 streaks of heaven-slaying sword chi would descend. Even if they could not kill Yun Ting, they could severely injure him. And Yun Ting had already attacked Fang Xian, the mortal-slaying sword chi erupting. If Su Zimo turned around to deal with Fang Xian again, there was a high chance of severely injuring Fang Xian. With that, he could get rid of his two greatest opponents and threats. Su Zimo did not even look at Fang Xian at the side. He merely looked deeply at Yun Ting and similarly chose to pull back with his spirit consciousness, dispersing 108,000 streaks of heaven-slaying sword chi. Yun Ting was proud and stopped because of that. Su Zimo was a magnanimous person and would not kick someone when they were down. The two of them had completely different personalities and backgrounds. They had never met before and were still fighting intensely just now. But at this moment, they had a surprising tacit understanding. Su Zimo's empty palm was originally prepared to condense the earth-slaying sword art. But at this moment, his killing intent was activated. This Fang Xian was way too sinister. He was like a venomous snake hidden in the dark, never knowing when he would sneak out and deal a fatal blow. In a flash, Su Zimo channeled his spirit consciousness and a gray mist surged in his palm, condensing into a long saber that emitted a shuddering aura. Great divine power, Time Blade. Facing Fang Xian's punch, Su Zimo did not dodge and slashed over with the Time Blade. In the blink of an eye, the situation changed and Fang Xian fell into the encirclement of Su Zimo and Yun Ting. Indeed, Fang Xian's attack was faster. However, even if he could hit Su Zimo's head, it would be difficult for him to escape from the man-killing sword chi. Trade a life for a life? Fang Xian did not have that boldness. He had transcended the 49 heavenly tribulations and ascended. He did not want to die yet. In a flash, Fang Xian could only retreat. Right then, the Time Blade slashed over. Although the gray saber was a little strange, Fang Xian did not feel much of a threat from it. Furthermore, compared to the man-killing sword chi on the other side, the gray saber seemed even more ordinary. Most of Fang Xian's energy was used to deal with the man-killing sword chi. He took a deep breath and condensed at least a dozen small divine powers in front of him. Most of them were defensive divine powers. On the other side, he retreated while waving his sleeves towards the incoming Time Blade. Bang! The saber was easily shattered by him. There was not even a scratch on his sleeves. How could this be? Feng Xian was alerted by the ease with which he dealt with the gray saber. However, it was too late. The power of time had already entered his body. Feng Xian was only about 10,000 years old. For a mystic immortal who had a lifespan of 100,000 years, he was considered young. However, after being slashed by the time blade, his lifespan was reduced by 60,000 years. In the lower realm, the time blade could cut off 30,000 years of a person's lifespan. In the upper realm, when it was released with the chi of heaven and earth, its power increased greatly. One slash could cut off 60,000 years of a person's lifespan. Feng Xian was originally a black-robe youth. In the blink of an eye, he had missed his peak and was now more than 70,000 years old. Feng Xian was right. The time blade was indeed not a threat to his life. However, the loss of 60,000 years of lifespan had a huge impact on him. Just this kind of absent-mindedness, the passage of time, the lapse of time, the loss of time, was very difficult to accept in a short period of time. Moreover, Feng Xian, who was more than 70,000 years old, had missed his peak in terms of physical strength, chi, vital spirit, and everything else. He had started to decline. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.